Run your next PB at the Gold Coast Marathon in 2023. Fast, flat and scenic. There is an event distance for everyone, from the full marathon to the kids 2 and 4 kilometre junior dash. Enter now at goldcoastmarathon.com.au.
Your skin can bring you so much pain. Now I hear you say you got the best of both ways. Won't you come and take a walk in my shoes and tell me if you take my place? Undercover of my skin, I've heard all your names. If it's all the same, I'll keep on walking.
Welcome to episode number 290 of the Inside Running Podcast. Thank you for joining us for another week. Just looking at the agenda here, it's going to be a big show this one. A lot happening in the running world and a lot happening in the life of one of the members on the Inside Running Podcast panel in Bradley Croker. We'll get to him in a second, but I'll introduce my co-host, Julian Spence. I'm sure Great Ocean Road Marathon was on Sunday and he would have been kissing babies, signing autographs, posing for photos as the king of the Great Ocean Road. Welcome to you this week, Moose.
Hey, mate. No, none of that for me.
Nothing. Surely some selfies or something. People getting photos with you?
I'm long gone down there.
Still got the reputation.
Nah, they've moved on. I'm just a bloke working in a tent. No one cares. Someone come, no one gives a shit anymore.
Surely not. That is a bit sad. It hasn't come to that, has it?
One bloke gave me a pump up. The event director gave me a pump up, came over, said g'day, and then that was on Friday night, and then didn't hear about anything until I saw the finish time, and then I could go around telling people that it was slow and I'd run way faster.
Looking forward to talking about that event and how it went, where they looked miserable, but I guess you'll be able to give us a real first-hand experience as you were down there. My other co-host, he's just come out of hospital this morning, been in there since Friday, I think. Had a lot of people concerned. Bradley Croker, welcome to you this week.
Thanks, Brady. Clearly, and it's good to have you back, actually, because clearly when I host, it's no good for my heart.
Yeah, I know, it's broken you 1 week of hosting. I am back because I wasn't sure. I didn't want you to be here because you don't usually come out of hospital, and this is kind of work for us, and return to your job that same day. So I gave you the week off. I had Ali Pashley teed up. I've got all the Road to Gold Coast stuff sorted. But you wanted to be here, which is good because you can tell the listeners exactly what's been happening. And yeah, it's probably good for you to just talk to some people, I suppose, because your life's a lot different this week than it was this time last week.
Yeah, it actually wasn't that bad in the hospital. There's internet and stuff now, and it was a weekend, so there's plenty of sport to watch on TV. So I was able to do some of my programs and the agenda for the podcast. So yeah, and to be honest, I think the hospital visit was a bit of overkill. It's probably worse than it's not as bad as what it seemed, I suppose, from the social media post.
Yeah, the post looked bad, didn't it, Moose? Had his shirt off too. Calli commented on that about Croaks having his shirt off. Looked very good with all the stuff on his, all the stickers on your chest and stuff. Looked serious as Croaks.
But you pretty much have to have your shirt off or wear one of those gowns because I had those cords attached to me non-stop. I had to go into the shower with them on.
Hey, I thought you looked good. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
I was going to give it at least a week before I got stuck into him about that post.
Well, Moose, it's funny you say that because there have been a lot of positives that have come out of the social media posts. And the reason why I almost didn't do it was because I knew that people like you would be like, oh, look at this bloke, just wants a bit of attention.
Little bit of look at me time.
I almost didn't post anything, but there's been a lot of positives about me posting it, which I'll get to later.
So tell us what happened, Croaks. This time last week, I wasn't on the show last week, but I remember listening to it. And you'd had the hard issues on the Friday workout, early in the workout, I think it was, and then it settled down. You still doubled, you still got out for 38K on the long run on the Sunday, and then how'd you find yourself in hospital?
Yeah, so when I had that episode on the Friday, I went to the doctor straight away, and he referred me to a cardiologist in here in Canberra, made the appointment, which was meant to be this coming Thursday. But in the meantime, doctor wanted me to go and get like full blood tests. So I thought, all right, I've got basically 2 weeks to go and get these blood tests as long as the results are back for the cardiologist appointment. And then do you want me to go through the first part of my training week?
Yeah.
And then,
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So, so Monday I got out in the afternoon for an hour at 4:15. It actually felt really good off the back of the 38K on the Sunday. Had no issues with the heart. And I just think the shoes that you wear for these long runs now, like you're just not beat up. Like back in the day, if I ran 38K at 4-minute Ks, like my legs would be pretty banged up, but I didn't have any of that on the Monday. And then Tuesday morning, I just did 7K on the treadmill, 12K an hour, so 5-minute Ks. Then the group session Tuesday night was just 8 by 3-minute reps off a minute rest down at Lake Burley Griffin. And I did have another little relapse here, not quite as bad as the Friday. It was on, if you check my Strava, it was on like rep 4. So I'll just go through the splits. It was, I went 308, 308, 308. And then on the fourth one, I averaged 309. But if you look at the pace, about halfway through the rep, I felt it sort of come on. And so I just went from running sort of low 3-minute Ks to just like 3:30 for probably only like 20 odd seconds. And then it sort of kicked back into gear and I was fine again. And then I was fine for the rest of the session. So then I went 305, 305, 303, 303. I actually really enjoyed that session. I felt quite strong. I did the same session the week before Canberra Marathon, but off 75 seconds rest. And I reckon I was probably averaged a bit faster this time than that previous time. So I was happy with how that went. Obviously having another little heart rate spike at like 200 wasn't like ideal, but I didn't feel like I don't have any chest pain when I do it. It's just this like shortness of breath and the pounding in my neck. And then basically didn't have any more issues after that for the rest of the week. So Wednesday I did an hour 45 at 4:06s, listened to Road to Gold Coast, which was entertaining and got me through the run. So it was 25K or just over 25K at 4:06s. Then Thursday was just my 35 minutes 4:12s. So it's generally my easiest day of the week. And then I decided to go Friday morning for my blood test. The reason why I went Friday was, 1, I don't work on a Friday, and 2, I wanted to get it done the day after, like an easier day. I didn't want to go on like a Monday after I've run 38K because I thought that might show some things, in the blood test that are actually only a result of, the day before and a long run. So I went Friday morning at first thing for the blood test because I had to do it fasted. And then after Lily's swimming, I jumped on the treadmill for another 7K at 5-minute Ks because the plan was to meet one of my athletes out at Mulligan's that afternoon for a fartlek session. And I was going to do it at his pace. So treat it more as like a half to 3/4 session because I was going to do like a bit of a marathon specific Sunday. And then just as I was leaving the house, so like probably like 3:30 or something, 3:30, my phone rang and I had it on silent. So I heard it vibrate and then there was a voice message saying, can you call? So I called back the number. And it wasn't even my GP. It was just somebody from the medical clinic that obviously accessed my blood test. And I couldn't really understand her too well. She had like a really thick Indian accent, but all I could take from it was something in the blood test was elevated and you should go to hospital. And I was just like, hang on, like you want me to go to hospital? And I said, what's elevated? And she said like troponin. And I was like, what the hell is troponin? And then, so Viv was out at her parents' place with the kids. And so I called my mate who I was going to train with and said, look, I probably shouldn't run. I've been told to go to hospital. And then I called Viv. So she left the kids at her parents and then came and picked me up and we went into emergency. And I did a bit of Googling and troponin is basically like an indicator in the blood that there's like heart stress. So if you've had a heart attack, then the troponin levels are going to be like high. That's how I understand it anyway. But I've also heard that you can get high troponin like after a hard workout, which obviously you haven't had a heart attack, but your heart's obviously been under stress. So the medical clinic, they sent me a referral via email, and I took the referral into emergency. And when I saw the pathology report, the normal reading for it was like 20, and I was 21. And when I showed the guy at the front desk, I sort of felt embarrassed a little bit. I'm like, why am I here when it's like it's 1 point over like what's acceptable? But they got me through real quick. Like, so I had an ECG. They took some blood, and I had a chest X-ray. And then we're sitting out in the reception area, and I was getting these emails saying, "Oh, you've got a test result that's come through." And so I could access my health record, and it would show me like the blood test results. And I was looking at all the blood test results, like, hemoglobin, all that sort of stuff, and everything was in like the healthy range. And we were watching the end of one of the football games, and I said to Viv, we'll be out of here soon because, we'll have a night without the kids because the kids are at Viv's parents' place. We'll be able to watch a second game of footy and just chill out. And then the troponin blood test came back, and I opened it up, and the hospital, so for them the acceptable amount is 26, and it was 185. And I showed Viv that, and I'm like, may not be going home. And
how did it change from the first? This was a different blood test?
Yeah, well, it's the same troponin, but somebody said something about different labs use different like parameters or something, which is like really, really confusing. So I don't know which to believe, but obviously both tests, the troponin was over the normal level. But this one obviously seemed quite extreme when, the acceptable amount's 26 or under 26, and I was 185. So the doctor came out and said, just come with me out the back. And she's like, have you run today? I'm like, yeah. She goes, did you run hard? I'm like, no, I did like 7K on the treadmill, like pretty easy because I was going to do a session this afternoon. And so then that figure from the blood test combined with my ECG, like my ECG, I don't think was bad, but it's also not particularly normal. But I think athletes' ECGs are probably different to the normal population. And so then when you're in a hospital, they go, well, this doesn't look like the normal population. So they then called up the cardiologist because the cardiologist wasn't in on a Friday night. And they then decided to keep me in and basically monitor me, which I think is largely because they obviously wanted to do more testing, but there's no way I was going to get any test, like an ultrasound. That couldn't happen on, basically till Monday. So, I was stuck then in the hospital all Saturday and Sunday. They pretty much just, checked blood pressure, temperature, had like the ECG leads on me like pretty much 24/7. So I had to like shower with them as well. There was like the leads were in, there was like a waterproof bag that you sort of carry around. What else did they give me? Oh, that's right. On the first night, they injected a blood thinner into my stomach, I guess to take a bit of load off the heart. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, and there was like blood on the sheets. And I thought, because they jabbed me with so many needles to try and find a vein to put a cannula in, I thought, my arm's bleeding. And then I looked down at my stomach, and there was like a 3 to 4 centimetre strip just below my belly button of just thick, dry blood. And I was like, it's disgusting.
Where did the blood come from?
From where they injected.
Oh.
Yeah, like they didn't, because she injected me, but she didn't put like a Band-Aid over it or anything. And I didn't think any of it. And then I've woken up and there's just blood everywhere. And then, throughout the weekend, they gave me some potassium and magnesium through the drip. And then I had, so this morning had an ultrasound. And then, which actually, funny enough, the lady that was doing the ultrasound this morning was Marty Dent's neighbour. So a good chat. And then, I was discharged. But the positive thing, Moose, out of my social media post was so many people that have like connections in the medical world with cardiologists and things like that, and just experience in the area, like reached out to me, which was really helpful in terms of, suggesting that I actually go and see a cardiologist who deals with athletes, because a run-of-the-mill cardiologist might flag something that's actually not an issue, but it's an issue for the general public because they don't have like athletes' hearts. So like a mate of mine who I went to uni with, his friend's a cardiologist in Sydney, and he gave me a call and recommended a lady in Sydney, and Brett Coleman, past guest of the show, like he was really helpful. He sort of put me in touch with Andre down in Melbourne, who's like one of the top sports cardiologists like in the country. Actually, he was the guy that did, remember the
Derek Clayton interview?
Derek Clayton interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs with us. He runs it with us a bit, and
he's like the best in Australia, isn't he, at doing that job?
Yeah, Andre Lagersh.
Yeah.
And so
he comes to our Sunday runs often.
Yeah, okay. So I had one hard copy of an ECG. So I sent that to both the cardiologist that I knew in Sydney and to Brett, and Brett then passed that on to Andre, and Brett and Andre had a chat, and Brett's actually like put me in contact with Andre. So I ended up cancelling my appointment this Thursday for the cardiologist in Canberra, and so I'm going to organise a time to come down to Melbourne for some more like stress testing and stuff like that. But I feel like 100% like fine. Like I don't have like chest pains or anything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much my week. So I ran 80K. I guess the positive.
Don't need to summarise how many K you did.
The positive, I would have done 150 if I didn't go to hospital.
Oh yeah, you would have been prepping for this pacing job at the Gold Coast.
Yeah, so I feel fine. And so what's going to happen now is, the ultrasound. So on discharge, I got given some like cholesterol tablets and some aspirin, even though my cholesterol is actually not that bad according to the blood test. It's more of a just preventative thing, but I'm not sure whether, I don't know. But yeah, I got like these discharge papers which have all of my like ultrasound results. So I sent that through to Andre and Brett as well, and that all looks pretty good. So I'm going to sort of leave it up to those guys now to let me know whether I can actually do sort of a bit of running until so a combination of the ultrasound, the ECG, my heart rate data when these things happen, those guys will sort of give me an idea of whether I can still do some training until I get down to Melbourne to see Andre.
You got to take this serious now, though, don't you? Like that weekly recap last week, as you said, you would have pushed through and run 150K.
Yeah, to be like, I'm not super concerned by it. And people I've spoken to, like in the medical world, aren't necessarily that concerned by it either. The blood reading for me is one of those things. Like I would love to know what troponin levels guys that run 160K a week have, whether there is just some like heart stress because of your running, not because you've had a heart attack.
But wouldn't Andre know those things?
Yeah, and so that's why I'm sort of liaising with him at the moment, because it's going to be a little while till I can get down to Melbourne. And so if he thinks that it's okay for me to run based on those troponin levels and everything he's seen in the ultrasound and ECG, then I'm happy to take his advice on it.
Yeah. There's like, even on the weekend, because I'm in the most social setting ever at a race. And so everyone's coming up saying, oh, mate, he shouldn't fuck around with that. Like, he shouldn't be messing around. And then you would hear like nightmare stories of people who had issues like this, like the exact thing that you had, but had proper heart damage and had to have like full on work. And, so it's like, The Friday night, you can't fuck around with the heart.
No, the Friday night freaked me out a little bit because here I was watching the end of the footy in the reception after I'd had all the tests and the blood tests coming through. I'm like, yep, sweet. And then when they call me out the back and then all of these different doctors are coming in going, do you have chest pain? Does it hurt here? I'm like, well, I don't have chest pain, but I'm having some anxiety now, which is almost the same as some chest pain because of what's happening. And it starts to make you realize that, and I don't know if you guys do this, but as a runner, like, yes, if you ask me like what's important to be a good runner, you need to have, obviously the heart is everything. But when you're training hard, I don't think about a hard injury. I think about if I train too hard or do too much volume or too much intensity, I'm going to get bone stress. I'm going to tear a muscle. I'm going to get sick or I might get some tendonitis. I never think that potentially if I train too hard all the time that I could damage my heart.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't. That's not something you worry.
No, you don't, do you? You think about all these other injuries. But yeah.
What about the whole you've got a certain number of heartbeats?
Yeah. Imagine if he's used on his quicker long runs as well, Moose.
But hey, this bloke's rolled a lot of heartbeats on Sunday.
We do 6 workouts a week.
The flip side of that, when you're super fit, your heart rate beats high for that like hour or two that you're exercising. But then I think I don't know if I said it while we were recording, but off air they came in the middle of the night and woke me up to see if I was okay because my heart rate was 35. And I'm like, well, that's just my resting heart rate, which is, probably 25 beats than average. So for every minute, I'm saving 25 beats on the average person, even though, over an hour or two each day I'm running with relatively high heart rate. So I don't know. Anyway, I feel fine. The weekend wasn't as bad in hospital as I thought it was. I actually feel more sorry for Viv because Viv's the one that had to deal with the kids on her own for the weekend while I was just catching up with mates and watching footy in a room on my own.
Yeah. Okay. So have you got that Melbourne appointment booked in?
No. So it's happening sort of we're in the process of it.
Okay.
Because all the emails between Brett, myself, and Andre were only yesterday and last night.
Brett Coleman, one of the best blokes you'll ever meet.
Oh, I know.
Top
How
bloke.
good is he? Yeah. He was so helpful.
Oh well.
Croaks, one of the more important questions.
Yeah, I think I know this one.
How many likes on the Instagram post?
Oh no, it wasn't the one I was going to ask.
Well, I don't know. Actually, let me check. Admittedly, it was, it's pretty cool to be part of the community. I should also say thank you to all the people that did reach out and message me or liked it or whatever. And even just having the contacts there to help me navigate. Because up until now, I didn't have a lot of faith in the cardiologist I was going to see because that's just been referred to by my GP. I know nothing about the guy. But then when guys like Brett and Sean Crichton messaged me saying, hey, I'd suggest going and seeing Andre in Melbourne. And you hear his reputation and you see that he's working with Derek Clayton and pro cycling teams, and to have the opportunity to go and see someone like that, I feel it's put my mind at ease a little bit. So yeah, thanks to everybody, I suppose, that messaged me or liked my Instagram post. 767 Moose.
Oh, record numbers for you.
You'd break 1,000, wouldn't you, though? A hospital photo.
Some people won't like that, though, because they're like, oh, I shouldn't like this.
Because you're liking the fact that it's in hospital.
Yeah.
You got to go pro rata though, as a percentage of how many people follow you.
That's true.
I've only got 2,000.
It's 45% though. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's a lot.
Big influencers only get 2 or 3%, Croaks.
He knows how to do it.
2,200.
How have you sponsor this time next week, Moose?
As many likes as he did have little sensor things on his arms.
One of those.
Oh, the other people I should thank are the medical staff. We've said it before, probably when Moose, you were in hospital. Yeah, but they are the most positive people you'll ever meet. They're at work, but they don't get around kicking stones. They seriously treat you as if you're the only person in the world. They are pretty phenomenal. Even at 3 a.m, they come in bright and bubbly. So yeah, they're pretty amazing. I couldn't do it.
Croaks, 5 weeks time, Gold Coast. It's your grand final. This race this time of the year. Pace and job. Have you pulled the pin on that, or you still think you're going to get up for it?
Yeah, so I'm waiting to hear back from Andre as to if he's happy for me to keep running, then I'll keep training. He might say, run, but just don't do the intensity side of things. So I haven't ruled out Gold Coast yet. I don't think I'm going to do the race in Wollongong though in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, smart.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I figure with Gold Coast as well, it's not I have changed Gold Coast a little bit in that if you asked me last week, was I going to finish the marathon, there was probably a pretty high chance that I was going to get myself as fit as possible in the next, 5 to 6 weeks with the aim of getting to 30K and then seeing how I feel and maybe kick down again. but I think I've definitely ruled that out. I think it would just be purely a pacing gig, which means I don't probably have to be quite as fit to get through, halfway in 72 minutes. So I can probably just dial things back a bit.
Yeah.
But what about do you have advice if you're out? Like, is anyone say you go out for a run or a workout or whatever, and then your heart rate does this thing, or your heart does this thing where you get a really high heart rate? Like, what advice have you been given around that?
I haven't been given any yet. But actually, the other thing that Andre emailed me today was this a link to a website. Like, I'm actually just opening it now. It's like cardia.com, and it's basically like it gives you like a real life ECG. So it's obviously something that you wear. So if I was out running, for example, and I had one of these episodes, it would be recorded as an ECG instead of just a heart rate spike, which that information would be really helpful for guys like Andre to work out what it actually is. So and Brett suggested I get one of those as well. So like about $200, I think. So
it's like a heart rate strap. Is it the same sort of thing?
Yeah. I don't know, because I only got home from hospital at lunchtime today. Like, I haven't had time to sit down and look at it, but there's something here that will give you can basically get a printout of an ECG, in real time, or like after you've run or something like that, and then I could send that digitally to whoever, and they could work out what it means.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, like, I was in hospital for 3 days, and that's the reason I was in there was they were trying to get me to have an episode, but I've never had any issues when I'm not, when I'm at rest. So it was unlikely that anything was going to show up on the ECG as a problem, and it didn't. Other than there's like a delay in my heartbeat by like 1 to 2 seconds at times. But once again, that's just an athlete thing. It's like you miss a beat, or there's a pause, but that's not anything to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay tuned next couple of weeks after you see Andre.
Yeah.
He'll know what's going on, the boss. Moose, tell us about your training week. Do much?
Oh, pretty average training week. I had a little Achilles niggle, and I felt it on the Monday. I ran 8.5K. I was going to double this day, but I felt it at the end of the run. So I decided not to double on the Monday. Went out Tuesday, jogged the warm-up, no problems. Jumped into Ali's session, which was 4x8 minutes at threshold with 90 seconds rest in between. And it was horrible for me. So the heart rate of mine, I thought I was having some Croker-type dramas because, it went up quick. And it went up above where it should have been. So it hit threshold at about a minute into the workout, which is just crazy considering the pace that we ran was actually really even. So I don't know what happened, but this was the first workout after I had time off with my back. And there's a bit of other shit going on, like having another stress around the stores and everything like that. And the baby's sick, like she had foot and mouth here, so she had a bit of a virus, and I thought, maybe I got a virus myself after this workout. It was really difficult. I had a shocker. If you go into the laps, like the first lap we did was 3:25 pace, and then the second lap was 3:21. That was a tailwind though, but my heart rate was much higher. And then on the end of the second lap, I started to feel my Achilles a bit, so I just basically bailed out at 5 minutes on the third rep, and that was 3:28. But look, that was a hard workout for me anyway, so I was kind of happy the Achilles played up a little. Funnily enough, I stopped, rested, and then jogged the cool down, and didn't feel any problems at all in my ankle. So, just a real shit workout for me.
How good's Ali's comment here, Croaks? Heart rate's a bit high there, champ, not threshold. I've actually called you champ after you ripped into it last week.
Champ is like the best word when you want to have a go, subtly.
Yeah.
The interesting, I didn't call it threshold though. So she's had a crack, but she's just off the mark. I don't she's tried to be funny, but it hasn't worked well. If I had have written threshold, then yeah, maybe. But 19 likes for that. You'd think as an Olympian, you're getting more than 19 likes when you have a crack at someone.
But all she needed to write moves was just nice session, champ. It would have been just as effective.
Yeah.
She's not funny enough for that though. She tries a little too hard. See, Dave McNeil also trying a bit hard on her workout.
0 likes.
0 likes.
Lucky these Olympians can run fast.
Oh yeah, not the funniest crew here. I was up in Melbourne the next day. I drove up real early and ran before the actual conference. So ran down Smith Street before the sun came out in Collingwood. That was pretty interesting. A few of the Collingwood supporters getting around, Brady.
Oh, yeah?
I'm assuming they were Collingwood supporters. They kind of look like Collingwood supporters.
From the Collingwood Army. What was it, Wednesday?
Wednesday morning at
Still on the beers after the Sunday win, maybe.
I don't think it was beers that they were on. A lot of action around the public toilets was interesting.
Isn't Collingwood like a real upmarket suburb now? Like hipster? Or not?
Smith
Street and that?
There's a few hipster things, but not at that time of the morning. It was pretty average. Fuck, it stunk like piss everywhere there. But I ran down past the G and then across, did a lap of the tan, ran way too fast around the tan as you do. Hard to keep under control there. I remember going up one hill and some bloke in cotton shorts and Kayanos and a tank top was racing me. Fuck, I'm not going to let you beat me up here. But I also shouldn't be running this hard right now. It's hard work to go for a jog around Melbourne without getting flexed on. So that was 12.3. I think I felt my Achilles on this run at about 45 minutes. Next day, just stayed at the other end of the Smith Street, did the same sort of thing, did a lap around Olympic Park for just a bit of nostalgia. Felt the Achilles same point, about 40, 45 minutes. So not much improvement, but also I can get runs in without noticing it. And then on the... then I fucked my back. So my back went bad on Friday morning. Friday night in bed, I could just feel it getting sorer and sorer. And then I got up to run early Friday morning. I was at the running company conference, so I was supposed to be there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday morning, tried to jog, got 3 steps and thought, no, this ain't happening. Got back to the room and Bree's sick. She's sick, Pia's sick, and so she said, you got to get home. I can't look after the baby today. I'm she's lying on the ground with some sort of migraine. She's thrown up already. So I had to boot it back from Melbourne. It's 2 hours home still, so not great. My mum's over in Europe right now, and her parents are in Perth, so no one could look after the baby. So I got home, looked after Pia for a while. Bree recovered enough. I went and collected a van that was packed full of stuff for Great Ocean Road Marathon and drove down to the coast. So drove down to Apollo Bay and set up shop down there. Saturday worked in the expo at Great Ocean Road Marathon Festival. So just slinging stuff, gels, socks, all that sort of business. The races were on just out the front. It was pretty cool vibes. Great race that. If you haven't ever stayed down in Apollo Bay for this festival, you should do it one time because it's like a community race on steroids. That's the best way to put it. It's it feels like people this is their first event, and so there's heaps of people that are really raw to running, and there's a heap of excitement around that. You don't get the real nerd runners there, or you do get a few of them, but there's a lot that are just footy players doing their first half, and I really like it down there. That Arvo ran with Louis Rowan. We somehow have timed this again. Last year we did the same thing, went for a run after the expo, and my mate Pistol, who was just running the marathon the next day, got in the Blue Doctor afterwards. Me and Louie had a swim. Woke up Sunday morning, went for a light jog before the race, came into town, went and checked out the damage from the weather. Like in the expo, the marquee was kind of bent and fallen over and exposed all of our stuff that had got wet overnight, so that was shit. The weather was atrocious on Sunday down there. And yeah, that was my week. So it was like, I'm going to say it was 50K or so.
58.
58, yeah. I thought I was on top of the back. Wasn't. This Achilles thing seems okay. Haven't felt it for a while now, which is good. But I haven't also run over like 30 minutes for the last 3 or 4 days. So I don't really care at the moment. Like I've got so much work to do that I can't even get motivated to run because I've got so much stuff to do. So this is a time in my running where running is like 3rd or 4th priority. And I'm sort of coming to terms with that now. I've got to get through this, deal with the business stuff, and then like obviously family stuff happens. And then if I get out for a run, cool. But I'm not really too concerned about it, especially when the body's not perfect. So yeah, we'll get through some busy stuff at work, and then hopefully I can start rolling some running again.
It's good though that you recognise that. Like so many people don't, and then try to like force it, and then you end up broken anyway. Or something, relationships put under stress, or your workplace, or something like that. Like something ends up breaking somewhere, but you've kind of thought, yeah, I can't be pushing the running at the moment, otherwise could be issue somewhere else.
Well, I'm just not sure how people can do it. I'm not sure how someone can have like an intense job, a family at home, and then go and punch out like high mileage with a really like focus on performance. I could never have done that. Like never ever. Even when I was focusing on running quite a lot, like home was easy. There's no baby there. Like you live with your partner and you've got no real responsibility. And then work, I could step away quite easily back then. And so I didn't have much stress at all outside running. I couldn't have done what I was doing back 3-4 years ago if I had the same responsibilities right now.
Yeah, probably didn't realise how good you had it either back then.
Nah, not at all.
I definitely know I didn't.
Well, I did when Watto had his kid.
Yeah.
So that was the first sign of it. When I watched him kind of have to change everything around his running, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's going to happen. Like, it can't be done. And he said, he's like, you get no sleep, you're running in the dark, like it's just not. You're always sick from the kid giving you viruses and that. So yeah, I saw it coming. But again, my body's not good enough to put me in a spot where I can be anywhere close to an elite runner anymore. So it's like, why would you force something that's clearly not working and sacrifice important shit that right now is actually really important at on tipping point, like business stuff?
Are you worried about Berlin?
Oh, I don't think there'll be Berlin. We've pretty much decided, yeah, like we're looking at buying a house. So we just sold our other house a couple of weeks ago. And so now we're starting to look for a house, and we can, you know what, buying a house at the moment is pretty hard work. So
especially on the coast.
Yeah, you can't go affording that. So it's like, okay, we still haven't gone on a honeymoon since we were married. So we have like a honeymoon fund there, but we just won't spend it. I think it's going to go to a house instead.
And that's stress, like selling houses.
Oh, mate, you would know. You're a fucking real estate mogul up there. And
definitely not. But dealing with solicitors and real estate agents and bloody tenants and like, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And
emails.
And then your baby gets sick. Like,
yeah, it can be done when everything is just tight. But the minute something like just becomes a little bit more difficult, it just throws the whole week out. Yeah. The minute one of the kids gets sick or doesn't sleep, or some event comes up at work and it goes from like a 7 out of 10 stress to a 9 out of 10, like your whole week just crumbles off you.
That's why I have way more respect for those, I guess, semi-elite people, like as you said, Moose, that have family work full-time jobs, are out getting their runs done at like 4:30 in the morning, but are still like nailing 130K a week. And they're running like, I don't know, like 2:30 for a marathon or something like that. With everything else that they've got going on, it's almost more impressive than like a sub 220 when all you're doing is running.
Yeah, I know. Because even this weekend, watching people finish the marathon, in my head, I'm thinking, I am so far off being ready to actually finish a marathon right now. And I don't even care about the time. Like, running the length of this road is out of my scope of capability. And it makes me also respect people that can get to the start line. Like, getting to the start line is a big deal. And I undervalued that for a long time. But it's almost like the win right there, to be on a start line healthy.
It's not racing this weekend?
Yeah, I'll probably race this weekend. Yeah.
Should stay Saturday night and do a long run Sunday.
His long run's 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Might be doing that Saturday during that race.
We're catching the bus up, Bree and I. So we drop here at Anarchy, which is on the way, which is where her parents live, and then jump on the bus and get dropped off again. So it should be fun.
Didn't you just say her parents lived in Perth?
No, I said they were in Perth.
Oh, in Perth. Gotcha.
Holiday. Yeah.
The trend will continue on my week, fellas, because sickness has been going through our household as well, and I've been dealing with it the last 2 weeks. Like just congested, just sore throat, cough. Probably had COVID. Tested a couple of times, but it's never been positive. But feverish, very much like all the things. But I've kind of been getting through the running. It never impacted my running. Like a lot of snot rockets, heart rate kind of feels like it's in the right spot. Getting workouts done, but it finally hit me this week where I had to modify the running training. So Monday was quite normal. Got out for 30 minutes at 4:32 in the morning, and then afternoon run a 12.8k and some strides, and that felt good. But just constantly like having coughing fits afterwards. I think I spoke to you boys off air Monday night after you guys did the weekly show, and I did Road to Gold Coast, and just couldn't get like my coughing under control. And then Tuesday, my day off work, where I kind of do prioritise running. I'd been trying to get a long run in or a workout of some substance on that kind of Tuesday, and went to Corop, where I run these hills, and was planning to do 40k, but kind of got 15k in and just was feeling a bit ordinary, and did get to my car, and I'm like, no, I've kind of done the loop at 15k, and I thought, no, I'll keep going, like I'm feeling okay, and just had to keep stopping and just coughing and trying to get my kind of breathing under control. I think my elapsed time, I ended up capping it at like 2 hours, but my elapsed time was like 2 hours and 8 minutes just from, constantly stopping and just trying to, just not coughing up anything, just trying to, just dry coughing, and yeah, wasn't much fun. So at that stage I thought, I've got to respect this a bit more. It's not one of those cold you can just kind of push through. So drove home and pretty much went to bed for the rest of the day. I tried to run Wednesday morning. I did like 5k at 4:50 pace, and I just was like, this is, can't even just jog easy with this kind of stuff. So I had Thursday completely off. Friday I started to feel a bit better, just did 10k in the morning at 4:31s, and that was okay. Saturday I feel like I turned a page and felt a bit better again, ran 14k in the morning at 4:27s, and then 7k in the afternoon at 4:19s, and that was much better. So I teed up with Archie to do a long run. We went out to the Barmah Forest, and I hadn't done like a long run or a workout for I think 8 days, so I was planning to just put a bit of steady effort into the long run. So we ran 15k in one direction from Barmah towards Echuca. We actually ran past AFL fans. The Indigenous round was this week gone. I think it's this coming week as well, maybe 2 rounds. But it's named after a guy called Sir Doug Nicholls. And Sir Doug Nicholls is actually from the Aboriginal mission at Barmah, which is called Cumbra-Gunja. So, and he's actually buried there as well. So he's a Yorta Yorta man, where I kind of live and where Barmah is and things like that. So it's just so much like dense forest and bushland, and has so much Indigenous history on these kind of roads and stuff that I just love getting out there and find it pretty special to be running in such a like a significant place where so many Indigenous legends, I guess, come from that area. So we started there, ran 15k in one direction, and then kind of steady on the way back, probably averaged 340 pace back to the car, and then I just did 2k cool down, so all up it was 32k. 346s, finished the week off a whole lot better than it started, but only 116k for the week. But I'm feeling like the sickness is potentially, I'm on the other side of it, and I can start, because Gold Coast is coming around quick. I think it's 5 weeks yesterday. So yeah, I've got to start doing some kind of work to be confident to have a crack. I'm in a bit of two minds. Like, I think if everything goes well the next month, I can have a crack, and ideally try to run a PB would be nice, just to get under that 2:19.53. Don't try to have that massive breakthrough, but just try to put a PB on the board was the kind of plan, and be feeling good in the second half. But I think if one more thing goes wrong in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll potentially have to look at it and be like, let's run with the lead females, or let's just have a positive experience here and take a bit of the pressure off, and just get the job done instead of trying to just blast one and run something a bit quicker. So we'll see what the next month holds. But yeah, kind of
you got 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks from yesterday.
6 weeks yesterday, is it? Okay, so I got kind of like, yeah, and I just might have to cut the taper a bit shorter. But yeah, I've done a couple of 2 or 3 marathon workouts, and feel if I can hit one marathon workout in a 35 to 40k long run the next 4 or 5 weeks, I should be in a decent spot.
Well, I guess you're trying to juggle it with the AV races as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so there's 2 cross-country races, one this weekend, and then there's a 12k as well. But I'm really just using those as kind of hard workouts. So hopefully, yeah, the plan is to do the one in Bendigo Saturday, and then do a decent long run Sunday. And when I say decent, like a lot of Ks, but not any intensity kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. But everyone's back better now in my household, which is good. Just got to stay that way. But anyway, hopefully we can get to a start line, which is what we're just talking about, Moose. Let's thank some Patreon supporters, fellas. Do you want to go first?
Sorry. I was attending to something. A lot of sick people at the moment.
Oh,
in your position here.
My mate Kramer's had 100 kids from his school away the other day. 100.
Yeah. It's rotten. Like, I checked in with all the athletes yesterday, see how you're going. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, sick. Yeah, just jogging, got the flu. Yeah. I'm like, oh, gee, this is getting around.
Yeah.
And COVID, like, we had people at conference, like a couple of people were away with COVID. That's starting to hit back again.
Yeah.
It is really getting there.
And it's that juggle with the running too. Like, I feel there's some stuff you can push through, whereas other stuff you kind of got to respect it a bit more. And just trying to, I don't mind being a bit underdone 6 weeks out too. Like, I'd prefer to be underdone than overdone. So I'm telling my guys, like, it's okay if we can get very fit in the last 3 or 4 weeks, as long as you're, healthy. You don't want to keep pushing through it and turn a 1 week sickness into 3.
Yeah. And there's no point. You're not going to get fit when you're sick and you're pushing through that, like doing hard workouts when you're sick. That is not improving fitness.
That was my problem. I was way too stubborn. So I was sick and massive snot. You know when you even your teeth hurt because there's such a build up in your cheeks and stuff? You ever had that? Your gums?
No.
Oh, that's what I had. And I was so blocked up I could not breathe through my nose. And I was doing I think I did a 39k long run and a 3x6k and just been way too stubborn. And now it's just turned into a 3 week thing, whereas I should have said, get on top of it, take 3 or 4 days easy, jog through. But we're suckers to that perfection of the program, and you've got to hit this and you've got to hit that. And yeah.
Special breed runners. It's the same with niggles. If you take 1 to 2 days off with a niggle, you can come back and be 100%. Like I did with that Tibant the week of Sydney 10. But then you run through it for 3 or 4 days and it's a 3 week injury.
Yeah, I think it's going to get worse too, Moose. The weather's just going to keep getting colder and colder as well. So, yeah, watch this. See what happens the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's thank some legends who support us on Patreon. Who you got, Croaks?
I got Magnus Lilland from Oslo, Norway. He's got a half marathon PB of 86 minutes set at the Soweto Half Marathon in Johannesburg. This course has over 200 metres of elevation and was run at 1,700 metres above sea level. So fair to say you can run a fair bit faster on a flat course at sea level. He's also ran 2:58 at last year's Copenhagen Marathon. He's a consultant at Bain and Company, which is based in both Oslo and Johannesburg. They're a global consultancy that helps the world's most ambitious change makers define the future. Across 65 cities in 40 countries, we work alongside our clients as one team with a shared ambition to achieve extraordinary results, outperform the competition, and redefine industries.
Well, I'm sold.
Got no idea what that means, but that's their catchphrase.
That's very nice. Do you reckon they pay a lot of money for someone like a consultant to come up with that?
Probably. Anytime you put consultant next to your name, you can charge quadruple.
Well, they are consultants, but I reckon they've paid a consultant for that to come up with.
Probably.
You ever done like a
What do you
mission
reckon
statements?
they do? What do you reckon they do, though?
Does the running company have a mission statement?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, like imagine, did you sit around coming up with that? Graduate outcomes, Croaks? You ever sat in staff meetings coming up with that stuff?
No.
Oh,
I switch off
I know,
when
exactly.
that stuff happens.
You sit there for 4 weeks coming up with these mission statements and no one can tell you what the mission statement is a week after.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
What's the running company's mission statement?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know it off the top of my head. But I remember it had to have all the right words in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the words that define you or whatever. Yeah. But I don't... See, I always struggle with this consultant stuff and go, but what do you do? Like, what does a day look like?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is so... Like, you read their thing, like, a global consultancy that helps the world's most ambitious change makers define the future. What does that mean?
Define the future. That's a very big responsibility to do that.
Well, on their website, some of the industries they work with, like aerospace and defence, automotive and mobility, aviation, energy and natural resources, financial services, real estate, private equity, metals, technology.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Good work, Magnus. That's
Magnus.
Good. Who are you thinking, Moose? See if you can match that.
Tara Brain. That's Tara with 2 R's, by the way. So Tara Brain, she's fast.
She is.
35:51 at this year's Run the Bridge. She was 8th. And in the City to Bay 2022, that's Adelaide, 42:31, 11th place. 77:44 at the 2022 Sunny Coast half. She was 12th there. We're pretty sure she's PhD candidate at RMIT University in chemical engineering.
Smart.
Another smart. You only
And
read
fast.
out the smart
And
people,
fast.
right? Smart and fast. You only pick the smartest ones to read out?
No, just, yeah. They're just whatever, like whoever's on the list.
That's the list, Moose. That's the list.
Yep.
How do you get on the list?
Sign up at patreon.com/Inside Running Podcast.
That's why recently we've had a few of the blue collar
Yeah, they
people
hit
sign up. Yeah, because they're like, here, I'm a blue collar guy. Here
they
we
hit
go.
the inbox too. They go, just letting you blokes know that there's a blue collar tradie out here supporting you guys. I'm going to thank Matt Sortarik. He runs for Essendon. He's also fast. According
Sostaric?
Sostarik I went with. Anyway, hopefully I've got that right, Matt, but I probably haven't. Runs for Essendon is very fast as well. He has a 1,500 metre PB of 4:02 and a 3K PB of 8:58. Also, he ran 36:28 at the Albert Park 10K back in 2018, which was his first ever road race. He's an exercise physiologist at the Performance Centre in Fitzroy. So also very high on the IQ ladder with that kind of qualification. Thank you, Matt, for your support. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Magnus, over there in Oslo. If you like what we do on the Inside Run podcast, you can support us at patreon.com/Inside Running Podcast. Road to Gold Coast, still coming out. I've had some issues, boys. I told you about the issues. The curse has got another one. The curse. The Road to Marathon curse.
Are you going to announce it now?
Yeah, I think I should. Well, it's pretty easy. People know what they're talking about. We spoke about it last week, that usually the people we sign up for the Road 2 series is someone gets injured, DNS, or someone doesn't finish the marathon. It's been a very, very popular trend over the, I think, 7 Road 2 series that we've already done. And our boy Reece Edwards has had an issue. We signed him I think, on the Friday. He did a run on the Saturday and the Sunday, and then he hasn't run since the first recording on the Monday night. He's waiting on a bone scan. So we're not 100% sure if he's going to be... He might have a small cameo throughout the next 7 weeks on the road to Gold Coast. But the exciting news is that we've found a replacement, and a very good replacement in that. I'm going to say it could be the most... what's the word? Hyped up debut marathon in Australia for probably since Andy Buchanan debuted. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I reckon.
This guy's actually quicker than Andy over the half marathon. So there's a case to argue that this guy could have the most hype around his debut marathon. A lot of people didn't know he was debuting, but he is a 61.43 guy at a downhill course over in Rome. His official PB is 63.31 at the Gold Coast Half Marathon in 2022. His name's Tim Vincent. He's coming in from Queensland. Very nice of him to accept the invitation to fill in for Reese's spot for the next 7 weeks. I think 6 weeks before, 1 week after. So he's going to be joining Ed and I on the Road to Gold Coast series. So if you want to listen to that, it's on Patreon. I hope people enjoyed the first episode. I thought Ed was good, Reese was good. Interesting, dynamics there, and hopefully we can build something similar with Tim in the next couple of weeks. Also catching up with Toby and Christian for the monthly coming up shortly. Toby, going to get to him in a second. Christian raced as well on the weekend over in Manchester. So it's all happening on the Patreon feed. You get it early. Oh, I tell you what, this week, good week to be a patron as well, because you get Shoe Geeks early. That's getting recorded tomorrow. And Croaks and I, it's going to be on the end of this episode when it goes out to the punters, but the Patreon supporters will get it tomorrow about lunchtime after we record it. The Craig Mottram interview, Croaks, the uncut version.
Yeah, I don't reckon you'll sleep tonight.
Oh, I'm that nervous. I don't know how many interviews I've done, but this one I'm the most nervous about. He was the guy. I had posters of him on my wall when I was growing up.
Yeah. What's the best question you've got for him right now?
Oh, we've got a document here. Croaks and I have been coming up with the notes. There's a lot of questions in here. I don't know if this is the best one, but Croaks has got some good ones in here. But I actually want to ask him, what would he be like as an athlete if he was an athlete now in the social media world? Because he was a superstar, and he seemed to love the post-race interviews. Obviously, that famous one at after the pre-classic, he seemed to really love that big dog. Give me some attention. I want to be the king of this kind of space, and he was always very good in front of the media. But I wonder what it would have been like if he could create his own media. Curate, I should have said there.
But then on the flip side, he was great at those interviews, but then he never seemed to engage too much with the fans outside of that. And he mentioned on the Coffee Club interview that he did how he respected guys like Ollie that, they're at a track meet, and then after the track meet there's a concert, and they're out there with the punters. Whereas Mottram admitted, he's like, that would have never happened back in my day. I would have been back at the hotel. Yeah, because
Twitter was around when he was competing, and he wasn't really active on that.
And so Facebook.
That's one of the questions we'll give him. What's yours, Croaks? What are you looking forward to asking him?
Maybe just guys that have been so successful at that level, just some anything he regrets, whether it's a training error or racing. Also, his when he came onto the scene for the 2000 Olympics, that's a great story in itself about how he made the team.
Yeah,
which a lot of our older listeners will know the story about him falling in the 1500 metre trials.
Yeah, don't give it all away yet.
A lot of our younger listeners won't know that how he got his start at his first Olympics.
I want to pick his brain as well on he was around in that era where, the Chepchirchir on the track, and then what Chepchirchir's gone to do in the marathon now, and, training partners of Mo Farah before Mo Farah got good. Mo Farah's still around now. Bikili, what does he think about all those guys and their longevity in the sport?
You got to hit him up about stories about Mo.
Yeah.
Because there's some good ones I've heard.
Do you reckon we'll get some drug stuff out of him too, I reckon.
Oh, I wasn't meaning that.
No, neither was I. I just mean, do you have faith in all the stuff that you see? I've heard him talk about, it was that World Champs in Paris, Croaks, when they ran sub-13 for the last 5K. He was doing the commentary for SBS.
Yeah.
And he was just how am I meant to compete against these guys? Yeah. Anyway, we've just given away all our questions for the interview.
That's good though.
Yeah.
You're not getting
the answers, but it's going to be very much like, because he's been doing a lot at the moment about the OAC stuff. So we're going to break it into two parts, like the deep dive with Craig Mottram, and then next week I think you'll hear like Craig Mottram and the OAC Oceania. Should be good. Let's talk about some running news. Manchester 10K. Do you want to take us through that, Crocs?
Yeah, so just a couple of international events. So the Manchester 10K was on yesterday. We had both Stewy and Jack Rayner racing. Stewy finished third in 28:35 and Jack was fourth in 28:40-ish. The race was won by Eyob Faniel in 28:27 and Marc Scott was second in 28:31. In the women's race, Hellen Obiri, backed up from Boston, she won in 31:14, beating Perez Chepchirchir in 31:59. And then I don't know if you guys saw any of the Seiko Golden Grand Prix over in Japan yesterday on the World Athletics YouTube site.
No, I didn't see it, but I just saw these results.
Yeah, so
many there in the crowd?
No, there didn't seem to be a lot, but we had quite a lot of Aussies in this meet. So we'll start with the women's 3,000. This was actually a really good race. So Rose Davies finished second in 8:44, which was a PB. Isobel Batt-Doyle was fourth in 8:53. There was like a group of maybe three that went out pretty quick, like low, pretty much like 8:50. And Rose was back in the second pack. But then with by 700 to go, Rose had caught back up into the front pack and then actually went to the front. And she put a really good gap on the field and got caught with 200 to go. But then she held, whoever won the race, she held her off basically till 50 to go. So, the winner ran 8:43 and Rose was 8:44. So pretty good run there. Matty Clarke was fourth in the steeple. He was in the front pack for a lot of the race and just fell off late. Ran 8:26. Madeline Murray finished fourth in the 1,500 metres, 4:13. We also had a couple of guys like Jack Bruce and Jude Thomas in the 3K. From memory, Jack ran 7:50 low and Jude Thomas was just over 8 minutes.
They'd be going there on the way to Europe, wouldn't they?
Don't know. Well,
maybe.
Not necessarily. Japan's not that far, so they'd potentially come home.
Yeah, true. That was only 4 seconds off Clarke's PB, so he's in shape. Great Ocean Road Marathon Festival, Moose.
Yeah, the best race was probably on the Saturday. Andre Waring broke the course record. He ran 40:19 for the 14K. I'm not sure how accurate the distance is, but it's good. Goes up a climb and then comes back. Have you ever run that?
No, I haven't.
Brady?
I've only ever done the half at Great Ocean Road.
No, I've never done this either, but they got a massive tailwind on the way home. He looked pretty good, so he ran 40:19. He beat Matt Buckle, 41:05, and Andrew Amor, he ran 41:14. There's quality times there. And then in the ladies, Sarah Klein ran 45:08 to beat Stella Radford. She was 3 minutes ahead, Sarah Klein. So Stella Radford 48:05 and Lizzie Duncan 50:41, and she's coming back from injury, so I think that was more like a longer run. But yeah, pretty good. It was a pretty good field, really. If you take those two top six, they've done well there. Average weather for the weekend, so half marathon. Andre Waring, it's a half marathon, but it's 23K really. Well, it is 23K. So he ran 78:50. Cam Smith, the Run Strong Surf Coast Track Club man, he ran 81:52 for second. And then in third, Simon Hogan. You recognise that name? Former AFL footballer for the Cats.
No, I don't. Simon Hogan.
Played for the Cats a few years ago. So he's from Warrnambool, I think. He's ran 82:12. That was pretty cool. Someone recognised that as it was happening. Maybe the commentator or the MC called it over the mic. I was excited by that. How many games did he play?
Yeah, just looking at his LinkedIn profile.
Oh, what are you LinkedIn profile?
Why don't you just Google him?
I did. That's the first thing that come up. Simon Hogan, manager, KPMG, snowboarder, hiker, and runner. Doesn't even say much about his footy.
No, maybe you Google him then.
AFL. 34, 182 centimetres.
How many games?
Midfielder. He was born in Deniliquin.
Denny, that's just up the road from Moama.
Let's get a game number on him, please.
Yeah, all right, here we go. He
played for 6 years, November to October.
He was 57th overall in the 2006 draft, and he played 22 games between 2009 and 2011.
That's 2 years, not 6 years.
Hey?
What's that? No, I'm saying...
Oh, no, that's on his LinkedIn profile. It says professional athlete for 6 years.
Oh, well, on his Wikipedia page, it's got playing career 2009 to 2011, Geelong, 22 games, 10 goals.
They win the flag 2011?
Simon spent 6 years with the Geelong Cats during one of the most successful periods of the club.
Yeah, you can't be... That's
Not
a tough
too
time
good
to
this
be
year,
on the
though.
Cats. Tough time to be on the Cats. Anyway, in the women's, Geelong runner Amy Fawcett, previously Amy Carrick, ran 90.49 to win the race. Elise Beacom, friend of the show, Surf Coast Track Club runner.
Long-time Patreon supporter.
Yeah, she's a Geelong cross-country runner. She ran 91.15 for second place. And then Kiara Sullivan ran 91.26 for third. The marathon was interesting. Really interesting race. So the conditions, obviously, screaming headwind and very exposed out in certain sections. So Toby Mende won. So our man Toby, who runs Strong King, also Surf Coast Track Club King, the running company Geelong King, lives in Anglesea now, so local on the Great Ocean Road. However, did not do this very easily. I've never seen a more ill man about 10 minutes after the race than Toby was. Like, he crossed the line and he was cooked. He was white as a ghost and his lips were purple and he was sick, so sick. So he's run 2:46.05 for the 44. He got to the front of the race with about 2 to 3K to go. So he was getting done at one point by about 40 seconds, about 10K out from the finish. He was getting beaten by Baden Westerweller. And so Baden Westerweller finished 16 seconds behind Toby at the finish. So after 2 hours and 46 minutes of running, he's only finished 16 seconds behind. Pretty tight race. And Tom Hall, he'd actually caught up to Toby with 10K to go. So it looked like Toby was about to get passed into for second place. So Toby rallied. So yeah, Toby wasn't too well after the race, but yeah, got his $3,000. In the women's, Sarah Coulter, Run Strong athlete, which is 1-2 for Run Strong for the marathon. She ran 3 hours 6 minutes, beat Caitlin Duncan 3 hours 11, and Danny Rogan 3 hours 12. So local athletes cleaning up down there. 3 of the 4 in the half and full marathon local athletes. Love that.
Didn't you just say it was a big community kind of race, like just that feel about it, so you'd expect the locals win it?
$3,000. It's been won by former World Championship representatives.
Former local, yeah. Was also a local resident.
I'm not sure. It's a pretty big race. You don't just chuck $3,000 up and no one shows up.
Lucky Andre Waring rocked up, I reckon. Added some depth to those results.
Yeah.
What do you think about the double, though? It's risky, isn't it? Run a half marathon after.
Mate, he was untouched out there.
Yeah, it's just
no one come near him. He ran with a T-shirt on, or a long sleeve maybe. So he's if you're running with a long sleeve, no one's troubling you. Cam Smith did well to get that close to him, to be honest. That's a real tempo from Andre. In the ultra marathon, which doesn't get a lot of athletes run it. It seems like a tack-on. It's always been a tack-on event down there.
Do they pay big money for that as well?
I think it's a third of the prize money of the rest. So I think it's maybe 1,000. But I've always sort of said this race should be Lawn to Apollo Bay. And then, chuck in the half, which is Kennett to Apollo Bay. I just don't think you need the extras for this one. Like, it's special enough as it is, town to town. So Dion Finocchiaro won in 3 hours 50. He was 20 minutes ahead of Theo Langlois, 4 hours 10. Ben Harris, 4 hours 18 for third. In the ladies, just under 5 hours Alice Hall was to win it. and then Tara Carson 5 hours flat, Kathleen Judge 5 hours 6. That's a long time to be out there in those conditions, because that's basically 5 hours of headwind.
Oof.
I know. Just think about that. I'm going for a 5-hour run, and the wind is going to be in my face at like 40 to 50k an hour pretty much the whole way.
Would it be safe to say the wind is bad or the weather is bad for this event like 80% of the time? Seems to be shocking
90%.
Most years. 90%.
90%.
Yeah.
That year Nick Earl got that tailwind, that was a fucking anomaly. And next time I see the weather on the Saturday going to be a tailwind, I'm entering that night. Or I'm just going to rock up and run. I said that to the event director. I'm like, I've got you on my speed dial now, and if I see conditions on Saturday that are looking like a northeasterly type wind, I'm signing up. Because that'll be the easiest marathon you ever run.
Same bloke, Croaks, who said half an hour ago that he wouldn't be able to run the distance at the moment.
Hey, with a tailwind, I could. just get yourself ready, and then let the wind take you home.
Well, let me take you. I'm going to whip around some states for some last race results. Sydney Half Marathon, the Runaway, I think it was. Sydney Half Marathon. My boy, Ed Goddard, got the win there, 65.21. Beat Benny St. Lawrence, 65.43. Your mate Croaks, James Nipperis in 68.20. So good to see Nipper still around the running scene. Marnie Ponton won the women's in 74.30. Neve Allen was second in 76.15. And Tara Prowse was third in 81.27. Some good money up for grabs there too, I think. Maybe $2,500 for the win. City 2 Casino down in Tassie. Jimmy Hansen got the win there, 36.22. Melanie Daniels got the win in the females. She was 43.30. Then there was the South Australian 10K champs. The Cox brothers were equal first in 30.19. They've been doing this a bit, haven't they? Like holding hands across the finish line. You've seen this happening?
Well, yeah, Croaks rolled through this before. I didn't get a chance to address it.
So who gets the state championship if they both cross the line at the same time?
I think I saw a photo with them both on the
they cut the medal in half.
First step. No, I guess they just hand out 2 golds.
It's a bit cringy, isn't it? Like, why do we have to do this? Like, you're in a race. What do you need to hold hands for? You've held hands your whole life.
Well, they're not twins, are they? There's an age gap between them. Jacob's older than Riley.
I think so, but why aren't you racing each other? Like, I don't understand. Like, do you not have any competitive element in your body?
Even just make a decision that, you're happy to run together for 9K and then basically all bets off for the last K.
Yeah, I don't like it. I like people who race. I want to see some action at the finish. No one wants to see hand-holding.
You're talking about the crowd, the fans rock up, give up their Saturday morning to watch a 10K race, and then they get that. I don't think
the South Australian athletes, like in general, like want their state represented like that either. Okay. Like this is this is the 10K. This is like Albert Park, right?
Yeah,
could you imagine
Albert Park?
Fucking hell!
10.
You imagine this? Oh, Joel Tobin White and Sam McIntyre. Oh, we're friends. We're like live together. I'm going to hold hands with you through the finish line. You reckon that's happening?
Nah. People swing punches at Albert Park.
That's embarrassing for South Australia in my mind. Like, what kind of race is this? You either take it serious or you don't.
We'll see what the inbox comes up with after those comments. Thomas Downer was third in 31.08. Brooke Hines got the win in the female section, 31.34. Zoe Tolan, the Patreon supporter, was a big fan of our Gang of Youth, I think, back in the day, 35.39. Tiana Sieta was third in 35.47. The other race I quickly wanted to touch on, boys, the night of the 10,000 metre PBs was on over in England, Parliament Hill track, I think they run this at. Just looks bigger and bigger every year, this event. The motorbikes on the course, on the track, with the video camera, some real good footage. It was about 6 hours of live stream. I looked at it today. There's about 5 or 6 different 10,000 metre races. Paul Chalimo got the win in the men's race in 27.12. Mizan Alem Adan, she got the win in the females race in 29.59, so broke 30. And interesting notes, they interviewed Chris Thompson at one stage there, because this was sponsored by On, and he said it's going to be a World Series and listed off 3 or 4 different cities it's going to go to, and he mentioned Melbourne. And I thought, do we know this?
You haven't seen this?
No? Is it going to be Zatopek?
Oh,
Oh, was it? I don't know. I've definitely heard this though.
Yeah, I've heard it in like whispers, but nothing like official like this. Like I've heard like stuff behind the scenes.
There's already been one. There's already been a couple. There was one in America already.
Oh, was that the Sound Running one?
No, it was a different one. It's called. This will get announced, but yeah,
I haven't seen it being like same branding and stuff though. Like I've seen On sponsoring different track meets and stuff in the US. I thought they were teaming up with like Sound Running, doing a couple of their ones.
Is this series though, Brady, all just 10,000 metre races?
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. He's like, we're picking this up and taking it to 3 or 4 different cities. And he said Melbourne was one of them.
I like it. It's a good idea having one night where it's the same distance and you just have different grades.
Oh, but they like Heat 4 was running like 29:34, I reckon, 35. Yeah. Like they're deep fields. It's got a bit more international in their main race. Like at once upon a time, I think it was like the UK big dogs like throwing it down. Whereas they don't seem to be there as much, like, you know, obviously Paul Chelimo, American Olympian. So they're getting bigger that way, but it still seems like they got the depth of the UK guys going around.
Yeah, this is going to be a common thing around the world. I think they're called on track night. That's the thing. Like, that's the deal. And I'm not sure. Like, there are pretty big plans for certain cities. Melbourne's one of them. I reckon you just got to stay tuned here, Brady.
Will they do it at Zatopek, or will it be a separate meet?
I'm not allowed to say anything.
Yeah, so you know what's going on.
Well, I know, but they haven't announced it yet. So, like, that's going to be a big announcement, I reckon. I won't get involved in that.
Okay. Yeah, well, Chris Thompson's announcing it on the live stream if you want to check that out.
He's said it, so we know it's happening in Melbourne now, don't we?
Yeah, that's cool. The last bit of news, boys, is some doping news. Ronix Kipruto, the 23-year-old Kenyan who holds the world record for 10 kilometres on the road, has been charged with a doping violation by the Athletics Integrity Unit. Kipruto, he also won the bronze medal at the 10,000 World Champs at Doha Moose 2019, was charged based on an abnormal reading from his athlete biological passport. The ABP monitors a series of biological parameters through a dedicated software program to pick up on indications of doping. That's what reads the definition from the Athletics Integrity Unit. He's coached by Brother Colm, who's the same coach as like David Rudisha. Pretty clean record. I think this is the first person to come out of that stable who has tested positive, or hasn't tested positive, has had an abnormal reading on his biological passport. Huge news. It seems like when you just check it, when it comes up on Twitter, when the AIU tweets every 3 or 4 weeks, you just expect to see another big name go. This one, I guess, is a bit grayer. It's not as black and white as testing positive to a test, but still must be in a bit of strife if they've announced it and pipped him. And I think there was a 2000, I reckon they were going back to readings from, you know, a significant amount of years, like 4 or 5 years ago, to be able to find this abnormal result. Thoughts there, boys? Nearly fell off my chair when I saw this. Pretty big name in the sport.
Yeah, I reckon it's a bit of
expect it though, don't you?
Sort of watch this space though, because obviously he'll fight it. And I read somewhere as well that his manager was like backing him in to the point that if he is found guilty and the ban like stands, they're going to pay back like a heap of money. Okay. That's how like confident they are.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
This is often the one, because I think I read the same statement there. If you come back from altitude, it can have different readings and stuff as well. That's often what they go with when this happens. So,
yeah, but they must be. There's got to be allowances for that. They're not going to.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You've got to trust the AIU too, don't you? Like, they're not going to make these announcements if it's borderline you've come back from altitude. There must be parameters in place.
It can't be borderline to be making bans, surely.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we sort of saw from the Pete Bowl thing that maybe it is. Maybe there are a few borderline things that go one way or the other, like with someone interpreting it one way. And, yeah, I don't know. Starting to lose a bit of confidence in the old testing system lately.
You'd like to think with a world record holder, though, his PBs are, like, amazing as well. What's that? It's 26 something, isn't it? 26 low he ran on the road.
Yeah.
Going to open it right now, and a 57-minute guy for the half. So, yeah, watch this space to see what happens there with that appeal. Training Talk, Croaks, listener question.
Yes, the Training Talk segment is back, and it's sponsored by Gold Coast Marathon. Run your next PB at the Gold Coast Marathon in 2023, fast, flat and scenic. There is event distance for everyone, from the full marathon to the kids 2 and 4 kilometre junior dash. Enter now at goldcoastmarathon.com.au. And thanks to the listeners, we've got a couple of questions to go through tonight. So first one, what is the closest you would do a half marathon in a marathon build-up? That question comes from Nick Delaney.
Say a hard half marathon. Is that what he means?
Yeah. Race a half.
Race a half
during the prep. What's the closest you can go and still run a good marathon?
Moose doesn't like this, do you, Moose?
I don't.
You leave it out.
I do. I think there's just too much mess around for the build up. So, look, if it's got to happen, and sometimes it does have to happen, and sometimes people just love running, and so they go, I want to run a half marathon, and who am I to say don't do that? But I think that your marathon will go better for you if you don't run a hard half within like 7 to 8 weeks of the race.
If you're going hard, you need to recover from that. Like, I know the shoes make a difference, but that's still a half week to a full week job to fully recover from a hard half.
More than that, in my mind.
Yeah.
More, like,
takes me 10 days.
You run a hard half marathon. Yeah. What do they say? It's a
day for
every mile.
Yeah, well, that's what they say, right? But that's like, sometimes I've been so cooked from those half marathons that like training's ruined for a decent 3 weeks, just because I'm just not recovering, and then I miss fitness. So you drop down into the race, taper. Like 1 week before, you're probably not doing you're not doing a long run that you would normally do, because you're going to taper into the race. You're going to miss a workout that week. You're going to do the run at a different intensity that you're running the marathon at. So it's not exactly specific training for what you're racing at, or what you want to do well in the marathon for, like that sort of pace or intensity or heart rate. And then you're coming out of that with 60 to 2 hour hard effort in your legs. For someone who's running an hour 45 as their half marathon, that's a really hard run. And it's a lot of volume at a higher intensity. So, yeah, your workouts are compromised the next week. You've often travelled for that half, so you're fatigued from that too. And then your long run the next week's probably not going to be as long as it normally would, because you're still recovering. Get it out of the program for me. I'm not a fan. I know it has to happen for some people, and that's fine if they want to often I'll schedule training right up to the race, so the race will be done very heavy on very heavy legs. So they might do a marathon workout during the week, then they'll do the race, then they'll have some serious recovery after it. That's the way I'll do it, and I won't allow it after probably 4 weeks. That's the limit for me. 4 weeks is the closest I'd do one.
Yeah, I'm the same with 4 weeks, Moose. So, like, if I had a major marathon coming up, like, I wouldn't race a half in the lead up. Last year before Gold Coast, I was meant to run Launceston 10, but I had that little calf issue in the week leading up. So I ended up then doing the half marathon at Launceston, probably 4 weeks out, but as a session. So, I think I did like 5K at marathon sort of pace, 500 float. But I know here in Canberra, before Canberra Marathon, there's a pretty popular half marathon, which is exactly 4 weeks out. And a lot of my athletes do that, more so just because they want to do the event. And so we'll often have a heavy block up until probably like a week out. And then like training does get disrupted. So obviously the week before the half is pretty light. And the week after the half is pretty light. And then they basically have one more big long run after the half, and that's it. So the only benefit I see is that for people that maybe are cooking their training a little bit, there's a couple of weeks there other than the half where the training load does back off a little bit. Whereas sometimes if all you're doing is training and you just get a little bit too excited and each week needs to be a little bit harder and a little bit longer than the previous week, you can get cooked sort of 4 weeks out, which you don't get that, I suppose, if you're racing a half 4 weeks out, because you've got like an easy week before, an easy week after, and it just backs things off. So I think you can get away with it, but no closer than 4 weeks out.
Depends where you're at.
Yeah.
I like them, as you said, like what you did at Launceston, using them for workouts. Like, it's a great way to get a workout and practice picking up cups or taking gels or having that morning race time like routine nailed. Like, it's not like you're doing a workout and you get to choose what time you start. Like, you got a bit of nervous energy there, and it's good to practice before race day. I know a few guys at Great Ocean Road, same thing, 6 weeks out from Gold Coast, do a workout, practice a marathon pace. You're right to train on the Thursday, Friday afterwards.
If I have an athlete racing a half 4 weeks out and they're in a heavy marathon block, I always say to them, don't be disheartened if the half doesn't go that well, because you've still got that marathon, training in your legs. It's not the A goal. And so I've had sort of 50-50 success rate with people running a good half 4 weeks out. Others, are still a bit tired from the training leading up to that, but then they bounce back for the marathon 4 weeks later.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to be in great half marathon shape.
No.
Because you're kind of training for something different. Like the marathon is a different intensity. It's a different, it's a different rhythm. Yeah. And if you spend a lot of time at threshold, like doing all these threshold workouts, it means that you probably haven't done enough marathon specific stuff, like at that sort of zone below, which is where we run the marathon. So I always sometimes I get scared if someone has a blinder in the half. I'm like, maybe we've fucked this training up a little bit. Maybe we haven't done enough of what we need and we've done too much of what's worked here.
Hey, another question regarding the Gold Coast Croaks. Does Gold Coast have cups or bottled water?
Yeah, that's come from 1983. That's a good question. And this is one thing that I do like about Gold Coast compared to some of the other major marathons around the place is every year I've been up there, it's been water bottles. And the thing I love about that is you're pretty much guaranteed of getting the whole 200 mils or 250 in your stomach. Whereas if it's just cups of water, you're not going to get much from the cup because most of it ends up over your face or your head or your chest. So I love the fact that there's generally water bottles at the Gold Coast.
Good to know. Thanks to Gold Coast Marathon for supporting the Inside Running podcast. Moose on the Loose. Question, purchase of the week.
Oh yeah, well we could have done the hand holding finishes, but we're going to do the marathoner who's finding the marathons too easy now. And so he needs a new challenge. So now he runs ultra marathons, or she does. There's a bit of a common theme lately that I've noticed, whether it's been people in store or through the expo over the weekend and around the race. It's like, the question, what do you pick the ultra marathon to do for? What are you doing the 60? And they said, I did Melbourne Marathon and I found it pretty easy, so I thought, I'll go up to the next thing. I'll just go longer. And as if they've clocked the marathon and it's just, they've done that. So there's no more challenge there anymore. I've always there's completing a marathon, which is brilliant. And I love people do it. It's a massive achievement to finish a marathon. And I saw that on the weekend. But that person isn't finishing going, that was pretty easy. I'm going to go longer next time. They're just stoked to finish. If you get comfortable finishing a marathon and you're going, that was easy, then why don't you aim to go faster? Why are we all of a sudden not worried about improving our time over the marathon? It just seems like there's a fade away from sort of challenging ourselves with time, and now we just want to challenge ourselves with distance. Have you guys? You might not notice that as much, considering you're in a training group, and you don't really get exposed to this type of recreational kind of runner crowd where you see this attitude a little more.
I know what you're saying. there's people that come to me for coaching and like they're not running many kilometres a week and they always want to pick out like the furthest distance possible. And I'm like, well, based on the amount of running that you're currently doing, we're not in position to get you fit enough to run a 60K race in however many weeks. So you're not going to be prepared for 60K, which like, why would you want to do it if you're not prepared for it? And so I'm like, hey, why don't you start with like 10K and half marathon, because the amount of volume that you're doing per week is probably more suited to those distances. And then over time, you're going to get fitter, you're stronger, you can run more kilometres a week, and then you can actually prepare properly for these ultra events. Because I couldn't think of anything worse than going into some of these like super long events not prepared for them.
Yeah, me either. But it a lot of the time it's not, they haven't prepared properly, like you said. They just they do the minimal training and it's like, let's just get it done on the weekends. I don't know how you enjoy that. It doesn't seem enjoyable in any way, shape or form.
No.
Good one. What's coming up, boys, to finish up the show? Road to Gold Coast Step 2. Recording Wednesday. Expect that Wednesday night, Thursday morning, patrons. What do you got, Croaks?
Big interview in the morning.
Oh, yeah, big one.
Might get back to work later in the week. And then hopefully a little bit of jogging. We'll see.
Be careful, Moose.
I'm scared about that.
Yeah, I thought this was it for you. I'm like, this could be it. Croaks might never run an intense K in his life again.
Well,
I've been thinking about you all the last couple of days, Croaks. I'm like,
I've been chatting to your boy Brett Coleman, Moose, and he's like, just take Andre's advice. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
And what's Andre said? Go for a run.
Well, we'll find out. I reckon he will, based on all the results that have come back.
I reckon we get Andre on the show. I've talked to Brett about it in the past.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, get him on.
Yeah.
Tell us about the heart.
That would be interesting,
I'm
actually.
not smart enough to interview a guy like that, Brett.
Yeah, and I reckon he's a busy man too.
Yeah, but still, a lot of people would be interested. A lot of runners, heart-related stuff. Moose,
I'll
what are you doing?
I'll ask him next time he's at our long run.
Oh,
yeah, all right. That'd be good, because there are a ton of questions. Like even now, like I'm like, hey, can that troponin or whatever, is 185, although the normal level's 26, is 185 really that dangerous if you're a distance runner sort of thing? And the running's the reason that's causing it. Like, yeah.
Maybe ask him that in your own time.
This could be a free consult for you.
Yeah. Not sure the listeners need to know questions that technical.
Doha Diamond League's coming up, 28th of May as well. Rabat.
I haven't seen start list for that.
Might see Stewy back there. Good to see him finish at that other one.
Yeah, he's bounced back from his DNF.
Come third.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And Mottram interview, that's coming as well. Anything else, boys? Moose, you tell me what you're doing?
Oh, working. Mate, you would have no idea.
But I'll work full time. I know what it's like.
But you don't really.
I do work full time.
I've been around teachers a lot. They're never really working that much. Like, it's babysitting.
26 10-year-olds, Moose. 26 of them.
You just go on bus trips to fucking like.
Bus trip. That's the hardest stuff. Excursions.
Oh, I'm not having that.
Kid, you're in charge of 26 kids. If something goes wrong, it's on you.
Yeah, I'm not saying I would enjoy it. I'm just saying that it's like
high stress.
Don't pretend like you have a job like mine.
You know what? Don't answer back to you. Shoes. Imagine working with shoes all day, Croaks.
Oh.
They don't sneeze. They don't answer back to you. You're still good.
Do you ever get alphaed by like footy players and stuff because they're bigger than you?
Footy players?
Like a year
10-year-olds. I work at a primary school.
Oh, right.
I work at a high school. I've had plenty of attitude. Yeah, I moved that's right. A kid had his phone, not allowed to have phones, and I told him to put his phone away, and then this other kid back chatted saying, "What's in your pocket?" And I was just like, all right, move over there. And so I moved him, and then halfway through the lesson he moved back, and then I said, all right, I'm happy for you to stay there. And then he gave me some sort of lip. I said, do you want to move back to where I put you before? And he's like, well, the only way I'm moving there is if you physically move
me.
Yeah, and then
boy.
So then I turned around and I just ignored it. And then he followed up with, "What? You don't think you're big enough to move me?" And I was just like, "Rightio."
We'll see an episode of
no. What do you do there?
A current affair, Moose. I reckon we see an episode with Clarke's belting a student.
That's where you just move it up the chain. I'm like, I'm not dealing with that.
Just pick up the phone. Just call your level coordinator.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Because
well, what am I going to do? Go and pick him up?
Oh, we know you couldn't do that.
No, he was bigger. He was bigger than me, and he was in year 8.
All right, fellas, let's wrap it up. Enjoy this part 1 Craig Mottram interview, ladies and gents. See us next week.
See ya.
Run your next PB at the Gold Coast Marathon in 2023. Fast, flat and scenic. There is an event distance for everyone, from the full marathon to the kids 2 and 4 kilometre junior dash. Enter now at goldcoastmarathon.com.au.
All right, this week's guest on the Inside Running podcast is one of, if not the greatest Australian distance runner of all time. He's been to 4 Olympic Games and had a bit of a cult following throughout his running career. He has a World Championships bronze medal and a Commonwealth Games silver medal. He's also known as Buster and the Big Mzungo, and now the head coach of OAC Oceania. Welcome to the Inside Running podcast, Craig Mottram.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a long time coming, this one. Been hassling the guys at ON and the OAC to get me on this podcast because it's been a dream of mine to chat with you about all things running and the OAC.
I don't know about that, but you're definitely one of our most requested guests. We've been going for 290 consecutive weeks. We've had a lot of people talk about you in their interviews over the years. I remember Chris Wardlaw's interview. It was good to hear his kind of input into your running career. And we had Collis and Jeff Risley and all those kind of guys along the journey Benita. So it's actually good to hear you actually talk, just not other people talking about you.
Well, all good things, I hope, although I'm pretty confident there were some bad things in there as well. I'd be lying if I said I'd listened to many of your podcasts. I haven't listened to any of them, but I've got, 290, you say?
Yeah,
so I've got
plenty to catch up on.
Long-haul flights of good listening coming up.
That's good, Craig. We usually start the show by going through people's PBs. So we're going to start with the 800, 152.9, but I'm guessing you probably closed a lot of 1500s and 5Ks actually quicker than that over the years.
Yeah, possibly. That's the official 800 PB. I think that was at a Victorian Championship B final. I didn't even make the A final of that Victorian Championships many years ago. I think I did throw a tantrum prior to that and didn't actually want to run, so it wasn't my best performance. But I have split 145 in training at St Mary's in the middle of a workout. So that is my official 800 PB, but I do think I could have gone faster, potentially had the opportunity to race a good one come up.
Was it just the fact that you'd always run the 15? You never looked to do like a 800 at a Diamond League or anything like that?
Well, I probably wouldn't have got a start in a Diamond League or a Golden League. I think they were back when I was running, but that didn't really suit the type of athlete I was. I didn't feel it was necessary to run a good 800 to be competitive in the 5K, which was my primary sort of event, I suppose. 1500 and 5K go hand in hand to a certain degree, but 800 was probably stepping down a bit too far for me, and I would have struggled with that speed to run it competitively.
Yeah, the 1500, 333.9 at Zurich. Any fun stories about that one?
Not really. I ran 333, 334, in that sort of ballpark for a lot of my career when I was going well. I never really attacked the hard 1500 to run fast. We did try to do one actually in Berlin after the 2005 World Championships in Helsinki. We lined one up with Daniel Komen. There's been several Daniel Komens, but this one was the 1500 guy that used to race Hisham El Garouj, Daniel Komen. So he was very good, 326 guy. But I hurt my hamstring doing that 800 in 145, funnily enough, in training at St Mary's the week before. So I couldn't warm up and didn't get to run. And he went and ran 328, I think, that day off the front. So that was an opportunity that went missing by trying to do a super session. There's a lesson for you all out there. Trying to do a super session and run too fast in training and did my hammy and couldn't race a 1500. And my PB still stands at 333.
Yep. The mile, Oslo, 348.9. I think this was in the build-up to 2006 Com Games?
2005 World Championships. Come on, Brady.
I knew it was one of the big races coming up. You're working on your speed. You knew you had to close hard in the last 4 laps.
Yeah, yes and no. funnily enough, I split 3:31 in that through the 1500. So back to my 1500 PB. It's probably not a true reflection of what of the mile, I suppose. But before the mile, I was obviously getting ready for World Champs in Helsinki, the 5K. But I actually fell over in Bushy Park where I was training before that, hurt my foot. Flew to Ireland for a few days to get treatment. Went over late the night before the mile in Oslo, off 4 or 5 days of not much running, and then went and ran 3:48 for the mile fresh. So there's another lesson. Going into races fresh is probably better than going in a bit overdone. And some of my best runs have come off being either injured or sick when I freshened up.
Yeah, right. The 2K, which we don't usually talk about 2Ks on this show, but pretty significant one, 450. You did this one. It's a national record. This was before the Commonwealth Games in 2006.
Yeah, you got that one right.
Yeah.
I was at the old Olympic Park in a couple of weeks before Com Games in 06. And probably one of my better records, actually, that one. And it'd be hard. Well, it won't be hard to beat. Stewy and these boys will beat it if they wanted to run it. But it's not an event that's frequently run. So I think it may stay around or has stayed around for this long just purely because no one does it.
Yeah, pretty rare to see a fast 2K happen. The 3K, 7:32, which was the national record before Stewy got it.
It was, yep. That was in the World Cup in 2006 against Kenenisa Bekele. So another good race, 7:32. It was more about trying to win the race and run fast back in my time. We didn't have pacing lights or anything like that to sort of target times. We just raced the scenario. And I think we were through 4 laps in 4 minutes. With Kenenisa taking out the pace, and then it slowed for a few laps, and then I took it up with 700, 800 to go, and ran home strongly.
Definitely could have run faster that day. I watched it yesterday. There was a fair bit of celebration going on with 30, 40 metres to go.
I think,
big scalp.
well, the next one you're going to talk about is probably the 2 mile, but I think both in the 2 mile and the 3K races, for me, in most of the races, it was more about the competition and being excited about trying to win things than run fast. It was very rare that I actually went out to time trial and try and run a fast time. So the times that I've run generally have all been in head-to-head competitions with another athlete trying to win a race.
And on that, Craig, we're going to get to it later, but we'll go there now. Like that World Cup win over Bekele, like I think there was a bit of, did he say afterwards that he was sick? Like, was he complaining and stuff, like trying to say like he wasn't at his fittest, but then he took it out in 60 seconds as well? Like, was a bit of a cop-out from him?
Well, I don't know what he said afterwards. I haven't heard that, but he wasn't initially in the 3K. I think he was initially in, I don't know if there was a 5K. He was in a different event, and then I think the day before decided he wanted to run the 3K because he thought it was an easier field, and then took it out in 4 minutes. We thought that would be the case, that he'd go fast to try to get away and then just be able to roll home easily. And so I just went with it, and I was in really good nick at that point. And it just came easy.
And for people like not familiar with the World Cup, because we've got a lot of new listeners who are new to the sport, and I'm not sure if it still happens, but it was one representative per like region. So you'd go and represent Oceania in that field. Does it still happen, Chris? Do you know?
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah.
Not in the point system, because it used to be a point system, wasn't it, Craig?
You know what? I actually don't know how they chose who represented who from whatever region, to be quite honest. But you're right. It was one athlete per region. So represented Oceania. You had a European athlete, African athlete, so on and so forth. So there was never massive fields. And, outside of Kenenisa, I won it in 2002 as well in Madrid. So the fields were never that strong, if I'm being honest, in terms of who actually did it. It was more of an opportunity for those that were still fighting on at the back end of a season to have another race. And there was big money, big prize money for those athletes that were, I think even last place got $3,000 or $4,000. So for those athletes that were willing to stay around and race, it was a good opportunity. And obviously this one, Kenenisa, decided to have a run, and I took my opportunity to run well and compete as good as I could, and got away with the win.
I remember it blowing up on the Let's Run like forums, like you beating him and stuff, like people just absolutely loving it. Like it was a huge, like, did it feel like that at the time, like a huge win for you in your career?
It did. I mean, we'd had some big things on already with World Champs in 05, Com Games in 2006, early on in Melbourne. So for me, The Melbourne Commonwealth Games, as good as they were and as well as I ran in the 5K, the 1500 obviously didn't go as smoothly as we'd hoped. So that became a really big priority for me in the back half of the season, was to focus on something else, and defending the World Cup title became my single focus for that season. So coming up and running there. And I remember the day before that race, my coach at the time said to me, I think Kenenisa is going to run in the 3K. It was actually in a press conference, actually. He said, Kenenisa is going to run in the 3K. And I said, I don't really mind who runs in it. I'm going to try to beat him anyway. And that was always the attitude that I took into races, whether it was a World Cup or not, or Kenenisa or whoever. It was always trying to win the race. And then the times and all the other bits and pieces come second to that.
Yep. The 2 mile, 8:03, pre-classic, the mullet, the post-race interview, the one of the most iconic kind of wins, I suppose, of your career. Celebration.
Well, that one, yeah, because it was at pre, and there's a lot of Steve Prefontaine's family actually go to that meet and watch it, and I got to meet a few of them afterwards, and they just loved the fact that I enjoyed trying to win races, and when winning them, enjoyed it even more, and showed people and played up with the crowd and all of that sort of stuff. So that was really good. Good fun. But the biggest thing to come out of that's biting me on the ass significantly at the moment is the mullet and the issues that I got 4 kids, 3 boys, and I took 2 of them to the hairdresser yesterday, and all they wanted was a fucking mullet. And I said, no, you can't get it. The school won't allow it. And they said, yeah, but Dad, you had it. And then they show me pictures on YouTube with a mullet, and you can't defend yourself. So it's, I was running well, but the haircut certainly left a bit to be desired.
That was good. You were ahead of the time too. Look at all the AFL boys now. Everyone's rocking the same haircut.
I think it's one of those things, Brady, that it comes around every decade, like flares, or cuts in your jeans and that sort of stuff. The hairstyles, they sort of go full circle every 10 to 15 years, and it's back in now. And then in 10 years, everyone will look back at photos of themselves and shake their head and wonder what they think.
Up to the 5K, 12:55 at Crystal Palace. I think, did you go under 13 maybe 7 or 8 times? That was the fastest one?
I don't know exactly how many times, but a few. And again, the same situation. It was always in races. So that the 2 mile was against Kenenisa's younger brother, Tiruku Vakili at Prefontaine. Then this one in 04, I think I ran 12:55 against Gabra Salesi. The same thing. It was a head-to-head competition with him. And that was the first time, funnily enough, I broke 13 minutes. I went from 13:03 in Ostend in Belgium to 12:55 in the next race, and racing against Gabra Salesi. And then every other time I'd run under 13 minutes was against another athlete trying to win the race. And ironically, I never won a race in under 13 minutes. So it was always the second place, I think. I finished. Every time I broke 13 minutes, I came second.
Yeah, but you're always there, though, and that was probably that competitive
but that doesn't mean much.
Yeah, but it did at the time a bit. Like, you just knew you were going to track, like you're going to be there at least, like you're not down the back straight when the race is finishing off.
Well, actually, there was a scenario in 2003 maybe when Kenenisa Vakili ran 12:37 for 5K and broke the world record in Hengelo. I was in that race and ran 13:10, which was the Australian record at the time. And I remember watching him finish, and I was halfway down the back straight. So I remember looking to my left, and he's finishing in 12:37, and I ran 13:10 and broke the national record. And thought, what the fuck? This guy nearly lapped me, and I've run 13:10. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. The 10K, 27:34. Any fond memories of that one? Pretty close to the Australian record. What the boys are still running these days?
Not really very fond memories of many 10Ks, to be quite honest. That was getting up to the upper limit of my probably more mental capacity than anything else. I just found 25 laps on the track really, really tough to get excited about. I sort of needed to be inside of the finish relatively quickly to get excited about the competition and things like that, where 10K just went on a bit long. And I think that was in Stanford, that when I ran 27:34, and I finished 3rd or 4th or something, I think, in that race. But never ran a really good 10K, to be honest. But it's a means to an end for someone that's more 3K, 5K, which is probably where my distance, the best distance for me, sat.
Yeah. You ran a couple of good road 10Ks though, didn't you? Like in New York?
Yeah, in New York, Healthy Kidney 10K. I won that a few times. I ran in Spain a couple of times over 10K. The road's a bit different to running 25 laps of the track. You can sort of entertain yourself a bit. You're looking at different things. You can sort of settle in, and it moves a bit quicker in terms of the mental process of racing, where the 10K, you're running the first 15 laps and you look up and you've still got double digits to go and you've had enough at that point. And you're like, yeah, seriously. It's for me, I found that really challenging. Some athletes are able to switch off more so, but for me, that engagement in competition and that competitive desire with, positioning yourself and excitement around the closing kilometre and that sort of stuff was really what got me into the competitions. And when that was 25 minutes away, I found that pretty tough to get into.
Do you enjoy watching the 10Ks these days? Like now you're not competing, because they wind them up now, and back in your day, it used to be maybe a bit harder from the gun, where it seems to be more like a sit and kick over the last 2 or 3 laps these days.
Funnily enough, we were talking about this in LA at Mount Sac a couple of weeks ago, because there were a few 10K races to be had later on after the main program had finished, and that was about 10:30 p.m. at night. We were sitting there going, who would in their right mind come and watch 2 10Ks at 10:30 p.m. at night? So do I enjoy watching them? I enjoy the strategy, and I enjoy watching the athletes because I know them and I understand the feeling and all of that sort of stuff. Do I think it's good for athletics commercially and things like that to have 10Ks on the TV? I think it's a tough question to answer in terms of what the priorities need to be and how we sort of capture the essence of what track and field is in a small package that excites people. But we threw around ideas like getting athletes to run 8K on the treadmill under the grandstand and then release them, on the track for the last 2K when the excitement happens and stuff, or get them to run out in the, around Albert Park Lake a couple of times and then bring them into the track and finish off there. So that it could run in conjunction with the rest of the program, because it's a big chunk of time to actually put, in the middle of an athletics program and try to fit it in. So from that point of view, it's challenging. But I do enjoy watching. One of the ones I watched many years ago was the 2003 World Championships in Paris. I was actually commentating it with Bruce McAvaney and Dave Colbert and a few of these guys. And it was Gabra Salesi, Bakili, and it was Pat.
Shaheen,
all these guys. Yeah. And I remember Gabra Salesi wasn't in great nick, and Kenenisa Bakili kept waiting for him and bringing him up because he wanted to get Ethiopia 1, 2, 3. And I think ultimately they did. But they split the last 5K of that 10K in 12:57. In Paris. And I remember one of the commentators leaned over to me and said, what are your thoughts on that? And I said, well, that rules out the 10K for, most normal people, because really, how do you compete with that? That their aerobic capacity, their ability to pick up the second half of a 10K, it's not something that someone of my size anyway, in particular, could do physiologically. It was just really, really challenging to see how good those guys are, and then actually have to psychologically go out and run against them, knowing that they could run faster than you could for the second half of a 10K that you could do over 5K. So it has, for athletes that are not necessarily built the same way, it becomes really difficult.
Do you think as well, talking about like the TV package, it's hard for the general population to understand how actually good and impressive and quick that is, watching it on TV?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they make it look so easy. Even the marathon. When until you actually get on a treadmill or try to run next to what Eliud Kipchoge did when he broke 2 hours, people find it really difficult to understand how fast that is. Even if you relate it back to kilometres per hour over the ground, it's quite hard to comprehend. And that's why I think running 5K in 12:55, people don't quite understand that. Even an 800 in 1:45, people don't understand that. But when you run a lap of the Tan in 10:08, the majority of people in Melbourne have run the Tan. They understand what that's like, and that becomes more relatable. So one of the biggest challenges with our sport and what I do now in terms of our business and everything else outside of the OAC is encouraging kids to participate in track and field, but actually getting them to appreciate and understand how exciting and fantastic the performances are by giving them that experience. So stepping out what 18.5 metres is in triple jump, by putting a bar up to 2.40 metres in the high jump for the men, and 2:05 for the women, and all of that sort of stuff. And people's eyes light up when they see it, and they go, far out, someone can jump that far or run that quickly, or all of that. And on the TV, it's hard to do that. Pole vault, 6 metres, far out. Unless you've actually gone and sat by the pole vault mat and watched someone jump 6 metres, you don't get it. You don't necessarily get that same appreciation. So how do we bring people to the track and actually get them to watch the sport and appreciate how awesome it is one of the biggest challenges we need to overcome.
At least park runs probably made 5K times a little bit more relatable for the general public. A lot of people there rolling 20 minutes and they go, oh yeah, elite guys are breaking 13. It's okay, yeah, that's impressive.
100%. Yeah, people need to be able to grasp the concept and have a feeling for what the level of performance, I suppose, that's happening at the highest level of track and field.
Yep. Craig, there's nothing on your profile for half marathon. Did you run one?
I never ran one, not competitively.
Okay.
I ran the Great North Run.
North, like that, yeah.
I did, yeah, but just as a long run after running the Great City Games or whatever they had up there. So never a competitive half marathon. Nope.
Yep. The marathon, though, 2:28:39, London, 2016, trying to qualify for your 5th Olympics at Rio. The training went well, didn't it? But the result, obviously, not what you were after.
Training went well. I was working with Chris Wardlaw at this point in my career. It was the back end of my career, to be fair. And I had no excuses, no reasons to not run. I think I needed to run 2:13 or 2:14 or thereabouts to qualify. Liam Adams had just run the night before in somewhere else in Europe and had run 2:14 or something like that. So that was the sort of time I needed to hit. And went through halfway in 67:01, but was already in a bit of trouble. I started to get pain in my hip and then down into my hammy. And, you know, at 20K, when those things are starting to happen, going across London Bridge, it becomes tough. And that was always going to be, if I didn't qualify, it was going to be the end of my running, you know, professional career. That I decided before that, if it went well, I'd go on to Rio and run and then finish up. If I didn't, then that would be the end of it. And I knew at about 21K halfway that I was going to struggle to run the time. So I switched my sort of focus from trying to run as fast as I could to just trying to finish and not opting out and going back to the hotel and doing those sort of things, because I wanted to enjoy the last hour or so of my running career. My parents were over there. My brother was there. So ironically, the time wasn't great. In fact, it was pretty ordinary. 2:28 is not a super competitive marathon time for an elite guy. But the experience of doing it really helped close out my career. So most people would look at that and go, oh, disappointing. But for me, to be able to actually have a full stop in the end of your career and know that physically you probably could keep going if you wanted to, but mentally I just didn't want to do it at the same level anymore, I think is a really important part of me being able to let go of the high-end running and move into other areas of my life. And I think a lot of athletes don't necessarily get that. They finish because they're physically broken or you know, for whatever reason, they just can't physically do it anymore. For me, there was nothing physically wrong, albeit I just got tired in that race. It was more an emotional and mental thing for me, where I just didn't have the desire to want to really take myself to the well anymore. And there's no better place to find that out than halfway in a marathon. So for me, I think, yep, time's not great, but the actual conclusion to my career was a really fitting way to go out, was to finish in London and know that I was done.
Did you get emotional over the last couple of Ks?
I did actually. I got really cold, funnily enough, because it was a cold day, and you think when you go running, you sort of stay warm. But I don't know. I don't know whether it's energy systems or running out of fuel or whatever it is. But the last 5 or 6K, I was freezing, and I remember just running down along the river and looking for my parents, who I couldn't find. There's so many people watching, and I was going to ask my dad if I could borrow his jacket because I was actually really cold. And then when I got to the end, it was emotional because Chris Wardlaw was there, and it's fun. Well, not funnily enough, but I finished, and the first person I saw was a drug tester. Came up to me, gave me one of those tinfoil wrap things, and his first words I heard after that was, he looked at his watch and said, "Geez, Craig, you kept me waiting, 2:28." And I was like, "Mate, you're lucky I don't knock you on your ass right now. Seriously, I've just battled away for 2.5 hours, and you're giving me a hard time, and then asking me to do a drug test." And anyway, I walked off to get drug tested and was sitting having a chat with Chris, and he said, "Oh, do you want a Powerade or whatever?" I said, "You know what? I just want a cup of tea. I'm freezing." So I sat there and had a cup of tea and a biscuit in London, waiting to be drug tested, chatting about running. And I then had to go and answer a few questions, you know, from media around what that meant and everything else. And I wasn't in the position to say that was it. You know, I just wanted to sort of do that in my own time. And I don't think announcing retirement is something any athlete should be, you know, having to do. I think you just transition into another part of your career, and you're always going to be a runner. But answering questions around obviously Rio and not being able to go there and everything else was emotional, absolutely. And to know in myself that was probably going to be the end of it was sad, but a relief in some respects, I think. And then to have my mum and dad and my brother and everyone else there was really cool. And Chris Wardlaw was great. But off the back of that, so that was fantastic. I do have to tell you this story because probably not the biggest regret, but it would have been the ultimate full stop in the back end of my career. When I was leaving, I actually left that night. I flew back to Australia. So I went to the airport and I was lucky enough to have a friend who'd got me first class tickets on Emirates. So we had an apartment. I had an apartment on the plane. And as I was checking in at Heathrow, the late Shane Warne was checking in next to me. And I'd met him before at functions and stuff, but we didn't really know each other. We sort of nodded and said, "Hey, going." He got on the plane, went to his apartment. I got on, went to my apartment. And then we got off in Abu Dhabi or wherever we did. He went off with his person. I went off with my person. We got back on, got to Melbourne, and we were both waiting to get our bags at the carousel. And he came over to me and he goes, "Oh, Craig, see you ran the marathon." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "How'd it go?" And I said, "Oh, not great, Shane. It was a bit disappointing." He goes, "Shit, I wish you'd told me that in London. We would have got on it all the way home." And that would have been the best. If that would have been the greatest end to your career ever, 24 hours first class on a plane with Shane Warne just all over it. We might have never got home, but that's probably one of the biggest regrets that I have, was not to actually say to Shane at the airport, "Hey, let's go and have a few drinks and have a good time." So anyway, that was a fun story.
Good story. And then talking about your family, like you come from a very good crop, didn't you? Like your mum and dad were both, was your dad soccer and your mum hockey?
Yeah.
And I know your brother played basketball for the Boomers, I think.
So Dad was a soccer player. He played for Wimbledon many, many years ago. So born and raised in London, in a little place just outside of Putney, central London. Mum Scottish, and then moved to London, north of London, to a little place called Norwich. Was a county hockey player, ran track a bit in high school. I have asked her how quickly she ran a 400. She tells me she's run 56. Whether or not that's true or not, would have been quite impressive back then when she was running. But genetically, yes, obviously, some good stock. My older brother lives in London. He's a financial analyst for HSBC. Been there 25 years. Run a few marathons. He's broken 3 hours once, I think, for the marathon. So he's just your general, all-round athlete. My younger brother Neil was a professional basketballer. Played for the Melbourne Tigers. Won a few championship rings with them. Played for the Boomers. Won a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in 2006. Still tells me that he's the only one in the family with a major championship gold medal, which is true. So he's got me there. And growing up, we were always competitive. We were 14 months apart. So each of us are 14 months apart. So Mum had 3 boys under 3, and very competitive, very athletic, very driven, all 3 of us in different areas now. But I think that's a big contributor to the success we've all had in our respective careers in terms of nature over nurture and all of that sort of stuff. I think we were lucky, we were blessed with both. We were all genetically talented, but then put in an environment where we were ultra competitive, and we nurtured that sort of desire to want to be great. And I think that's that'd be a massive part of the reason I had so much success in running, and I'm still so driven today in everything that we're doing.
So on that, Craig, we don't get bogged down too much in your junior years, but you were also a pretty good triathlete at high school, I believe, and you could have probably excelled in other sports. Why was it running?
I wish I had an answer for that, Craig. I think it was just timing, to be honest. Like I love triathlon, still do a bit of work in triathlon, and I really enjoy all the 3 disciplines. I think in particular for younger developing athletes, I think triathlon is the perfect foundation. Even for athletes that want to go on into middle distance running, I think the ability to swim and ride and develop your aerobic engine without the stress of the load of running is really, really important, even to the point where that's a big area of focus for me in identifying young, talented athletes. But we had the Olympics in Sydney in 2000. I finished high school in 1998. And I think just in all honesty, it was more the timing than anything else. The opportunity in athletics was far greater. In triathlon, they only had 3 athletes, men and women, to be selected in the Olympic distance triathlon. And at 18, coming out of high school, that wasn't going to happen for a junior triathlete. But in track and field, you could do 1,500, 5K, steeple. There was more opportunities. And I, in year 12, my final year of school, just focused on running rather than all the other disciplines because, I had other commitments with school and everything else. And I was always a strong runner in triathlon, but I was quite a good swimmer as well. I would say they were probably on par in terms of my ability. I would never have made it as an elite swimmer. I wasn't that good. But in high school, I wasn't an elite runner. I just was very fit. I used to do things like ride from Geelong to Lorne and back, which is about 120, 130K on a Sunday with a triathlon group or a cycling group that I was training with. And then I'd get home or back to the start of the ride, and there'd be a note from my dad on the answering machine and my coach saying, you tell Craig he's got to ride home, which is another 35K back to Lara. Then my coach would give me $2, send me to Baker's Delight to buy a custard scroll and then ride home. And that was just how we did it back then. So it was never about focusing on being the best runner. It was just about getting really fit and strong and building that base, which you can never underestimate or never forget. That has a huge impact on your ability to then transition from junior to senior sport and carry that fitness level, into whatever sport or discipline you choose to play. And it could be footy, it could be netball, it could be whatever. That foundation of fitness when you're younger is huge. And I get asked all the time about why are African athletes better than non-African athletes and all of that sort of stuff. And I don't think there's there's plenty of reasons, but one of the big ones is they're just active, a lot more active when they're younger. They have a bigger aerobic base, a bigger engine. Yes, they're genetically different. They live at altitude and all of those various bits and pieces, but we have the ability to do that too. One of the biggest things that you'll see with the athletes that are really good, Australian ones in particular, and from other parts of the world, not so much Africa, is they're very fit all the way through their younger life. So they're doing lots of different things. They're not necessarily early specialising in running, but they're just fit. They have big engines. They're always out there doing stuff. They're on their feet. They're competitive. Athletics isn't something that you can, in middle distance anyway, that, in my opinion, you can pick up when you turn 20. You have to have 10 years of work before that, whether you know you're doing it or not.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Sydney Olympics, because a lot of our younger listeners wouldn't understand, I guess, the drama involved with you making that team. And people know about your 2006 Com Games fall, but there's another famous fall, I guess, at the Olympic trials in 2000. Do you want to talk us through what happened there?
Not really. Yeah, well, I was 19, I think, at the time, and I don't even know why I was in the 1500, to be fair, because I hadn't run the qualifying time for the 1500. I actually ran the qualifying time for the 5K in Battersea Park a month or two before the Olympic trials in Sydney in 2000. And anyway, for the sort of wiser minds at the time thought the 1500 would be a good event to do. So I did the 1500, made it through to the final, and then I needed to finish in the first three to qualify automatically. I had to win. I had to win to qualify automatically because I only had the B standard. And back then there was an A and a B standard. A was time, you qualified. B was if you won the trial, you would get in, and then it was up to the selector's discretion, from there on in. And so I needed to win. And I was leading into the home straight, and there was another athlete, Nick Howarth was his name. I don't even know what he's doing now, actually, to be honest, Nick Howarth. But he was very, very talented, very, very good runner, but just an overly enthusiastic personality. He'd be doing push-ups on the start line and all of this sort of stuff. And he tried to get up on the inside of me and sort of pushed me on the hip to move me out so that he could get a run through the inside. And 50 metres to go in a 1500, you're all out. You don't have a lot of legs left. And I fell over and then got up and walked over the finish line and, young.
Bit of argy-bargy.
Bit of hot-headedness going on, which was pretty standard for me. We had some firm words and, a few things went missing, fresh air shots and all of that sort of stuff. And so it was a bit of fun. And then I got into a bit of strife for bringing the sport into disrepute and, all of this sort of stuff. And there were some other stories that happened after that with some of the guys. I don't know if you remember these guys' names like Darren Lynch and Rowan Perrott and Lee Troop and all of these guys who I used to run with in Geelong a lot, and we had really good mateship. We stood up for each other and looked after each other and all that. And they were, plotting how they were going to get this guy back and all of this sort of stuff. But anyway, long story short, after I walked off the track from that, I wasn't going to be selected in the 1500, obviously. So my coach, who was Bruce Scriven at the time, said, go and run the 5K. Because if you've got the time for the 5K, you won't be selected if you don't run the trial. I said, Bruce, that's in 20 minutes. And he goes, yes, go and run it. So I went straight from that to the 5K, ran the 5K, finished fourth out of the A qualified athletes. I think it was Sean Crichton, Michael Power, Mizan Mahari, the late Mizan Mahari, with the three ahead of me. And then I finished fourth in that race. And Darren Lynch, I think, was another one who had actually qualified and didn't qualify in the 5K. So I thought that was it. Thought it was, it was over for me. Wasn't going to go to Sydney Olympics, all of that sort of stuff. And then a few weeks later, got a phone call from, can't even remember who rang. I think Bruce Scriven actually rang me, and I was on a farm in Anarchy shooting rabbits. And he said, you got to run in the Olympics in a couple of weeks. You need to come back to Geelong and get yourself ready. I said, how's that happen? He said, well, Sean Crichton's focused on the 10K and he's given up his spot in the 5K for you. So you're in the team. And that's how that happened. So had that not happened and had the timing of all that not come together, and had I not fallen over potentially and all those sort of things, maybe I wouldn't have been in running. Who knows? But it's, back to your original point, why running? Fuck knows. Why would you do it? It's
a side note to that was because it made like the headlines because Nick Howarth ended up getting DQ'd. So then Yusuf Abdi was the winner of that race, and then they had a trial,
correct,
a rerun the week later in Adelaide. And I think it was Yusuf won, then it was maybe Nick, then you third, which is pretty rare to have like a rerun.
Well, they put everyone on a plane the next week, so and you can imagine that you put yourself in that position where you've just run the trial and then the whoever it was made the decision, no, we'll fly you all, you got to do it again next week, so we're going to bring everyone back, and they've just made up some event in Adelaide, put everyone down there, 15 blokes, and made us run again in Adelaide. And credit to Yusuf and to Nick, they ran better than I did in the retrial. I just didn't cope with that setup at all, and they got their opportunities to make the team, and luckily enough, I got there through the generosity of another athlete, Sean Crichton, who I still to this day owe a slab of beer to. It's become a bit of a joke, actually, because I promised him that at the time in 2000, and I will repay him at some point. We'll take a slab of beer to his home and we'll sit there and drink it.
He drinks very expensive red wine, though, Craig. Could cost you a bit, this favour payment
very
back.
Clear and Brady in my it's a slab of beer. I'm happy to get him a nice slab of beer, but I can only imagine what Sean drinks these days. It would be well out of my budget, but we'll enjoy telling stories regardless of what it is.
So then the years through that, like moving from Bruce to Nick and becoming who you did become throughout 2004, 2005, 2006, like did anything significant change in training, or was it just more of a professional approach from this kind of like young kid starting the sport to becoming the massive name that you did over those years?
It's a good question. Back from 2000 to 2002, was actually 98 through to 2002 when I was coached solely by Bruce. Melbourne Track Club was around, obviously with the Olympics and Freeman and Rowan Robinson and Kyle Vanderkype and Tim Forsyth and all of these guys. There was a really big movement with that Melbourne Track Club team, and I sort of formed part of that in the early days of my career, but was coached by Bruce. But ultimately, you then end up working with the other coaches that are associated with Melbourne Track Club. And I don't think the training changed a little bit at the end of 2002 when I moved on from Bruce, but I think it was more the environment and the opportunity and the ability to train, in the UK and in America and get into races and all of those sort of things that brought me on. And I've actually been asked this before. Do I think I would have run 12:55 if I'd stayed with Bruce as my coach? And I think I said ultimately, yes, I would have run fast, under 13 minutes. I would have run maybe not the PBs. Who knows? It's impossible to know. Would I have medalled at a major championship? Maybe not. And I think so. The environment and the ability to get into races and believe you can win and compete and overcome challenges, I think the Melbourne Track Club set up and that environment and professionalism around that helped develop that element of me. Did it make me a better runner? No. I think ultimately the athlete is who they are genetically. They've got the physiology, they've got the ability, they've got the natural engine and all of that sort of stuff. The training complements it and helps build it and develop it. But the psychology around running and competing and winning and all of those sort of things is a big part of what the coach provides. So I think physically I probably would have had the ability to run as quick, but psychologically would I have been as determined and focused and driven as I was? Maybe not. And I think that's what that environment sort of helps create. And I talk about my own coaching now, and no doubt we will later on, but I was very fortunate in my career to have someone like Bruce Scriven in the early days where he taught me why I love running, why I do various bits and pieces. And you probably heard this in the other podcast I said, but it's worth pointing out again that is really important in the development of young athletes to understand why they do things and the passion for doing it. And then having that passion then being put in an environment where you can really take it to the next level is a really important transition as well. And that was the Melbourne Track Club setup. And then obviously the back end of my career with Chris, where you're sort of starting to wind down. You've got other interests in life. You might have children, you might have work or business or whatever, and how you balance all of that. Chris was really fundamental in that for me, in terms of being able to let go of just being a runner. So almost transitioning out of that professional environment into a more balanced lifestyle, which is really important too at the right time in your career. So I think I was really fortunate to have the 3 phases and the 3 different personalities that I got to work with. And I've taken a lot from each of them, and it's given me a really nice foundation to continue developing myself as a coach, and what we do now with the OAC and with our business, Elite Wellbeing, and all of that sort of stuff. It's been hugely important.
We'll get to some big results in a second. Clarke, can I just jump in? That 2002 World Cross short course, the 5th position. Like, I know everyone likes to talk about Helsinki and the Com Games and stuff, but like, is that one that you feel gets a bit lost in all of it?
Well, I hadn't thought about it until you just raised it then, to be honest. Yeah, I suppose. But, I mean, that short course cross-country, I loved it because it was there to fit athletes like me into cross-country. So, and for us, it fits nicely at the back end of our Australian season. So you might run the 5K at the Nationals or the 3K at the Nationals or whatever, and then you get to go over and run a world cross-country race over 4K a week later. We're really in a really good period of time for us athletically to go and perform well. I think that was in Dublin, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But it wasn't soft, though. Like, because there was a short and a long, it wasn't like one of them was the main event and the other one was just for some track guys. Like, it was still super competitive.
They were loaded. I remember, like you'd be running 2:30 for the first K in cross-country to get yourself in position. They were some of the most highly tense moments before a world cross-country short course. You got 6 guys in a metre-by-metre box with a rope across the front. And then you knew straight away as soon as the gun went, it was on, and you'd have 200 guys stampeding towards a corner, and 12 mil spikes and all of that sort of stuff was, at the bottom of your shoes. You run into them, and I ended up having stitches a couple of times after World Cross races with running into the back of spikes. But I think World Cross generally gets lost a little bit, and on that, you mentioned Benita at the start of this in terms of athletes you've had on these podcasts. Guys like you and people that listen to this would know what winning a World Cross means. It's probably the toughest event in the world to win in middle and long distance running. And back to our original point about how to make athletics relatable, cross country is kind of one of those things that's not necessarily that relatable, but far out when you're doing it, it's really hard to be good at it. And Benita's win in 2003 or whenever it was in Belgium was probably one of the greatest runs in Australian track and field and cross-country history. To go and win that is unbelievable. So, yeah, the 5th at World Short Course Cross is a good result, but, there's been plenty of good results that don't necessarily capture the imagination of the population, which means they don't necessarily draw the same level of interest. So I enjoyed World Cross. It served a purpose, but it's not ones that I look back at and say are my better runs, no.
You keep going, Brady, because I think we'll go through more of the career. I've got more questions about the mental side of running and stuff like that, which we'll get to.
Well, let's go to Helsinki, Craig. Like the 2005 World Champs, it was. I've rewatched it so many times, and obviously it features in the Big Mazungo, the documentary. I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there who have just watched that last 50 meters where you were gone, but you come back. Like it was. I don't know, like it never happens like that. Once you get past with 60, 50, 40 meters to go, especially when it's guys like Chepchirchir is the guy actually past you, and then you re-dipped him on the line. Ben Limo was first, Shireen was second. The first medal in so long on the track for 5K. I think it's probably, I got down here, I'm not sure if this is correct, but the first non-African born runner to receive a medal in the event until Jakob Ingebrigtsen got it 2022. So that was when I was still a young kid, but I remember that was the first like mainstream kind of thing, like seeing that on Channel 7 News and things like that, like actually athletics on the mainstream kind of media. And yeah, do you want to maybe just take us through what it was like? Obviously you're super fit and you're super confident, and then what happened in that last 200 meters?
Well, it's interesting. I like hearing stories of other people and how they watched it and where they were when they watched it and all of that sort of stuff, because there was lots of interest, and there's many reasons for that. But obviously Com Games in Melbourne 6 months after the World Championships meant that athletics was on the radar in Australia with a major event like that in our region. But I've even heard stories, Eloise Wellings, who I don't even know, she may have been on this podcast maybe before, but
Yep.
She pulled over into a service station in the early hours of the morning, I think it was, and actually got them to put it on the TV, the race, because there was no YouTube or internet or live streaming or whatever of that. It was on Foxtel or whatever it was back then. And she actually pulled over and got them to put it on the TV there and watched it, which was pretty cool. So actually hearing people's stories and how much of an impact it had and how interested they were. At the time, I probably didn't appreciate as a runner. For me, I was just going there to try to run a race and win. And I was in really good nick. I'd run 3:48 for the mile. I think the better run actually from that World Championships at Helsinki was my heat. Kipchoge and I went neck and neck in the heat and both jogged through in 13:12. And it was the easiest 13:12 you've ever run in your life. We were in heat 2. We probably didn't need to run that. I think heat 1 had run 13:40. But we were just egging each other on a little bit in that final lap. And we both looked at each other. And I remember after the race, I had several people in the warm down area come up and go, far out, you would be, one of the favourites to win that. And I knew that at the time. I was in really good nick and I thought I could win that race. But we kind of needed it to go a little bit quicker in the final to have it sort of fall where my strengths were, which is a bit of a quicker pace and then just winding it up over the last 3 laps. But it was quite slow, the final itself. We didn't have any assistance in that race at all. I think the only other non-African person in there was Marius Bakken from Norway, who ironically I spoke to after the race, and he said, had you asked me, I would have taken it out for you, because he took it on after about halfway, I think. But we didn't know him at the time very well or anything like that. So my plan and strategy was quite simple, was to settle, relax, don't make any unnecessary runs, and then be on the shoulder of Eliud Kipchoge at the bell, and then try to take it on down the back straight, get to the front and hold on. And had it been a little bit quicker, that would have suited me more. But obviously with the slower pace, everyone in the last 500 or 600 metres can run really quickly. 53 seconds for the final lap is not out of the ordinary at that level. And so I got on the shoulder of where I needed to be at the bell. I positioned well, did everything I wanted to do, tried to move to the front down the back straight, but got held out by, I think it was Seleshi Sahini. He was holding me out and I couldn't get to the front. And I was maxed out on the back straight to try to get there, and then had to make the decision to slot in behind him rather than run wide round the turn. And then in the straight, go again. And anyone that's run, and you guys have done this yourselves, I'm sure, you get to the home straight, you're already moving as quickly as you can. You try to go faster and you tighten up. And my big tell for me is my shoulders used to come up. I'd stick my chin out and then I'd start to lean back. And I think the best thing for me that happened was Kipchoge passed me on the outside, and then I went from thinking I could try to win this to thinking, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to get a medal here. And I sort of took a big breath and relaxed. And then in my mind, something tweaked, and it's happened to me before in competition where I was like, no, can I swear on this? Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it. Swear on the
I was like, fuck that. Like, I can't not get a medal in this. Like, this chance, this opportunity, they very rarely come around. And so I just fought on, and I kept going and going. And I think having that breath and taking a moment to relax, and then actually, re-going again and just digging in deep to the line, it is desperation. And it's hard to explain what that is. And to athletes that don't have it, it's really difficult to give it to them. It's kind of a natural thing. And I always had it growing up when I was playing soccer, when I was playing footy, playing school sport. Even to this day, I've been banned from cards on any OAC training camp because I crack the shit. I'm too competitive with that sort of stuff. And it's just a desire to not want to let it go. And I think in that moment, in that situation, and my parents were in the grandstand as well, and they said to me afterwards, it was like when you were in Little Aths and you used to have guys like Paul Jamieson and Chris McCarthy and all these guys, that we'd go neck and neck in Little Aths, and that competitive nature and desire and spirit to want to beat each other up in racing. You got to have that to be competitive in track and field, and it's a natural instinct. I can't tell you exactly how or why it happened, but it was just a moment where you just sort of go within yourself and you think, I can't just accept that fourth place is going to be okay, and you just fight on. And got Elliot on the line just. Came third, which was great. It was a great result, really exciting to medal and all of those sort of things. But it does you do wonder had the race gone a little bit quicker and all of those sort of things, what the result may have been. But I'm quite happy with a bronze medal there. Celeschi was fantastic. Ben Limo, who won it, that's probably the best run he's ever had, was awesome as well. And he actually came out to the Com Games in 2006 to race me there in a totally different event again.
Do you feel, though, like you go into the race with Kipchoge's the one to beat and then Ben Limo blows everyone away in the last 40 metres, and then maybe Ben Limo's the one to beat at the 2006 Com Games as the world champion, and then this random, small, young Augustine Choki kind of is the only one that hangs with you with 3 or 4 laps to go? Like, there's always a popping up. Yeah,
so hard to predict who was going to be the guy to beat when we raced, because you can't always have a good day. Like, and for me, there was only ever one of me out there doing this. So if I didn't have a good day, you'd get beaten. As simple as that. If I had a good day, then you could be competitive. But you just didn't know. There was always going to be others in the race having a good day, because there were so many athletes from Africa at the time coming out. And there was Isaac Songok, who was probably the most talented runner in that race, who had run 12:48, I think, earlier that season in Oslo. And to be quite honest, he should have been winning those races, but psychologically he just didn't engage well in the high pressure scenarios or situations like that. So we had half an eye on him as well, thinking, well, if he runs up to standard, he's going to be really hard to beat. Ben Limo was not even discussed in terms of what he's going to offer. And I think only because the race went slow, he became dangerous, but we didn't know that at the time. Like in the 13:10 race, he wouldn't have featured, maybe. We think. But what we did know was Eliud Kipchoge would have been there or thereabouts. So he was always going to be in the fight to win a medal at the bell. So the strategy for me was always to try to create something that was consistent. So if ever Bernard Lagat was in the race, get on Bernard Lagat at the bell and you'll be in a position to win if you're good enough. Or if Bekele was in the race, just follow him. Like keep it really simple in terms of the strategy. And we knew Eliud Kipchoge would be there at the bell trying to win. So if I could be on him and I was good enough, then I'd be a chance to win. And I probably wasn't in a position at that point to take it on from 4 or 5 laps out myself. I wasn't young, but it was the first time in a major championship that I was in a position to actually try to fight to win a medal. So, and the year before in the Olympics in Athens, I finished 8th. And I can't remember the 7 in front of me, but they were all world-class athletes. And I think for the first time in 2005, I actually honestly believed that I could beat them. In 2008, it was more about following them and just seeing how long I could hang on for. In 2005, it was, well, I can beat these guys. What's the best strategy for me to do it and try to implement that? And then beyond that, like in 2006, when you saw at the Commonwealth Games, I took it on from the front. We realised, okay, well, following them doesn't necessarily work. Let's try to take it on. And always trying to evolve and figure out scenarios to try to win the races was something that I was always doing.
Brady, I'm guessing you're going to go to like the 2006 Com Games. But before we get to that, you've come off the bronze medal, 2005 World Champs. Australia have the Com Games. You know what the Australian public's like when we have a major event. Did you feel a sense of pressure in the lead up to Com Games? And like, how did you sort of deal with that?
It was exciting. Like, yeah, there's pressure and expectation and all of those sort of things. But I think athletes in that situation, we like the excitement and we like, it sounds silly, but you like it when people follow you and support you and encourage you and want to see you do well. And generally speaking, most people are they want you to do well. So their support and encouragement is about, wanting you to achieve good things and be successful in those and those sort of things. So if you take it the right way, it's really exciting and it's uplifting and it can help you, do better. And that was the take that I had in 2006 was that, it was an exciting opportunity for me to run. I was living in Richmond, just over the road from the MCG. It was really a really exciting time for our sport. But it did get a bit overwhelming at times, to the point where I actually left Melbourne and went and trained either in Falls Creek or in Ballarat just to get out of the main part of Melbourne. You couldn't go for a run around the town without starting on your own and ending up with 20 people running with you, wanting to talk about running and all of those other bits and pieces, which is great. But when you're doing it twice a day, every day, 7 days a week, you kind of just need to have your own space and do what you need to do. But as long as you take it positively, that people are doing it because they're interested and excited to watch you do well, I think for the most part, it's really exciting.
We won't talk about too much, Craig, because I think a lot of the listeners have seen it and watched it, and I think I've watched it a couple hundred times on YouTube. It's terrible quality. Okay, have you got a better quality one that you can upload to YouTube yourself? Whoever's uploaded that, some bloke.
I've got 1,000 of those DVDs, Brady. I got it. They're sitting in my desk. Yeah, I'll give you one.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, I'm sick of watching the grainy version of it. But do you look back now? I was in the stands actually, like the loudest. I've been to a couple of like AFL, prelims and semis and stuff as well, where there's 90,000, 95,000 in there. And the thing is though, like half a barracan for one team, the other half a barracan for the other team. So it gets loud, but not quite that loud. But that night at the MCG, so loud when you went to the front. And like, even though you didn't win, there was just a sense of like, sounds lame, but like Australian pride that you tried so hard to win, and like you didn't just sit back and just get drop off the back. You were trying to drop them, and you dropped them all bar one in Augustine Chogi, and just a massive race for Australian athletics world. And I wonder what you think of it now. Like, does it, when you watch it back, or I'm not sure if you even do or think about it back, like does it feel different to at the time, like a bit of a was that really me kind of moment?
It does. Like you remember it, but I don't know much detail about the race itself because you're so focused on what you're doing and concentrating on how you're feeling and being relaxed and in the moment, and your senses are so heightened that you kind of your memory, you're not really remembering it. I don't know if that makes sense. I always say that the good races, you don't often remember that much because you're so in the moment. You're focusing on what you're doing. The bad ones, you remember every step of them because you're trying to figure out how to get out of there, or I don't want to be here, or this is crap, or whatever. And those memories sort of stay in your mind. And interestingly, my wife, Christine, she's done a PhD in athlete well-being and neuroplasticity in the mind, and how our mind is negatively geared. So automatically, a human's mind is geared towards the negative. So we remember the negative. We always default back to that. And I'll ask you, it's off tangent here a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you're lying in bed and you're thinking about the day, how many of you think about what you did well versus what you didn't do well? Most of the time, you'll sit in bed worrying about what you fucked up or what you didn't do, rather than giving yourself praise around what you did do. Oh, geez, I trained really well today, or I did that well, or, I spoke to that person really politely, or whatever. We always think about what we didn't do well. And I think it's the same in races. When we look back at the races, we always think about what we didn't do well, and we forget to praise ourselves on what we actually did well. So when I look back at this race in Melbourne and look at the 5K and think about it, I always try to think about what I did really well. Even though I came second, there wasn't anything more I could have done, in my opinion anyway, to try to win that race. Like I had a plan and a strategy in terms of how I wanted to approach it. We weren't 100% sure how fast it would go, but I think after the first lap, it was a pretty clear indicator that the three Kenyans were going to take it on and make it quick, which probably sacrificed Ben Limo a little bit, to be honest. We're not entirely sure why they did that, but we weren't that aware of Augustine Chogi and how good he was going to be. The main focus was on how to beat Ben Limo, which was to start building it up from 4 laps out and dropping him. Which is ultimately what we did, but there was just one other guy who hung on a bit longer. The thoughts for me are, I don't get frustrated by it because, as I said, there wasn't much more I could have done, but the level of competition and the desire to want to try to win that and do everything I could to do that. I sit here now and I'm really proud of that. There was just another guy that was too good. And you can't be disappointed in that. And Augustine was fantastic, was brilliant. And we both ran under 4 minutes for the last mile of that race. So, I mean, honestly, what more could you do? And I think that's why people respect it, because I was happy to try to win, do everything I could to win. But then in defeat, knowing that you've done everything you could, you can stand tall and honestly, hand on heart, say there wasn't anything more I could do and there was just someone better.
Yeah. Anybody listening to this that hasn't watched that video, go and do it, because there's 2 videos that if I'm lacking motivation, it's the 2006 Com Games, and it's an Elgar Rouge montage with Bruce McAvaney's commentary from the 2004 Olympics. Those two, it's like you watch those and you're like, I'm going for a run. Doesn't matter if it's pissing down rain outside. Craig, between sort of Aftercom games, like we're going to get to you sort of coming back from the dead in 2012. Like you had some sort of mixed results. Like I remember 2011 Zatopek, just before you then, a few months later or the next year qualified for the Olympics. Like you're rocking up, finishing 7th at a Zatopek. Admittedly, it's a 10K when you're like one of the best we've ever had. How, like, was that hard for you?
Of course it's hard because, you know what athlete you are and how you want to, to run and all those sort of things, but you can't always be at your best. And I think sometimes you've got to acknowledge and appreciate the little wins along the way in terms of what you're doing. And yes, that race was disappointing. I remember doing it, but if you'd understood the years previous to that, it was actually a win to get out there and run a 10K and actually get through the event and be able to run the next day. And not many people would understand my journey from 2008 after the Olympics in Beijing, when I was probably one of the favourites to get a medal, to be quite honest, in Beijing, and didn't make the final and flew home. I had some pretty bad Achilles issues. Actually, from when I fell over in 2006 at the Commonwealth Games, I didn't realise, but I pulled up a bit sore in my calf and then went and raced the world short course cross country in Japan, finished 8th or 9th or something, I think, in that, and then was quite sore, and then got orthotics to try to accommodate a few little challenges. I had plantar fasciitis and things like that, got orthotics to try to help that, and then got Achilles problems. And in 2007, 2008 was managing quite bad Achilles. And the morning of my heat in the Olympics in 2008, I was sleeping in plantar fascia boots. So I had 2 boots on, couldn't walk in the mornings, had to get up, walk for half an hour or whatever before I could go for a jog and went and run. And then after Beijing, went home, had some tough decisions to make. And then one of them was obviously to try to get healthy. And it took 3 years. 3 years and 3 Achilles operations to get my Achilles right before I could actually do some training again. And that Zatopek that you talk about and that race in 2012, in fact, the race in 2012 was 5 weeks after having my 3rd Achilles operation when I qualified for my 4th Olympics. So, yeah, maybe they're not my greatest runs, maybe they're not my fastest times, maybe they're not my best finishes, but they took more effort than anything else to get out there and do, ironically. And to overcome those challenges. And that's what happens in the back end of your career. As you get older as an athlete, it's just part of the process, is that your body starts to, especially when you've worked it as hard as I have, your body starts to break down and you've got to overcome different challenges. And that's where, having other things in your life and other elements to what you're doing is really important, because if you're putting all your eggs in running and it's not going your way, life becomes pretty challenging.
Yeah, and that 2012 at Lakeside in the rain, won the race. Like, it was like the return, like, in a way, like, from the Nike to the Adidas kit, the change of coach. When Rab was on the show, actually, he said that these were his words, that you had a shocker 1500, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before in Sydney, and he kind of sent you to Falls Creek, and then you did a session with, I think it was Pat Scammell on the track in Albury, and then you kind of knew you were ready to go, and then, come out and did that, and it was you were still there kind of thing. It was a great result to see.
It was just harder to get to. I think that was if that makes sense. Like, as you progress down the back end of your career, those moments become less frequent because the energy required to get up for them is more difficult. And I ran in that 1500 that Rab's referring to, in 3:41 or something, I think, in Sydney. It wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't great. And we walked the lap of the track in the warm down area afterwards, and this was how my mind worked, and still kind of does work this way. It needs a trigger sometimes to set it off, and that was a trigger for. I was just furious at myself for not running well there and not delivering what I wanted to deliver, and that was a trigger for me. I said to Chris at the time, I said, I'm going back to Falls Creek, and in 2 weeks I'm going to win that 5K at the trials, and we'll go to London. And he just looked at me and went, okay, and walked off. And that was all I needed. I went back to Falls Creek. I knuckled down. I know the session you're talking about. We drove to Albury. Pat Scammell had the key to get us on the track. We came on the track. Lee Troop was there. We did quarters. And I can't remember. I think I ran like 13:18 or something for quarters. And I said to Troopy at the time, "Don't fucking tell anyone about this, but I'm on. We'll be good." And then went to Lakeside, and I knew I was going to go head to head against Collis in that race. And this amazes me sometimes, this sort of stuff, but I knew exactly what they were going to do because I knew his coach. I'd worked with him before. It wasn't rocket science. I knew that there would be pace for 6 laps and Collis was going to try to break me. Fuck, genius, right? Mm-hmm. And that was exactly what happened. And I was like kind of laughing to myself, going, how obvious can you be? And follow, 250 to go, see you later. Basically, Melbourne Track Club towed me through to an automatic qualifier to my 4th Olympics. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and you could, I'm just an outsider looking in, but you could feel there was that, it felt like tension. Like it was like the Melbourne Track Club of, you were there, but then you'd moved on and now like you're going head to head. And because it didn't even, like back in the day, wasn't Collis like nicknamed like Simba as like the one who would take over after you'd kind of left? And like I'm living in a Chukamoama hearing these stories 3rd or 4th hand, but that night it definitely felt like it was an answer back almost.
Well, I don't know. See, it depends what motivates you. And sometimes that external motivation is what you need to get up and going. But ultimately, you've got to be driven internally in terms of what you desperately want to do. And I wanted to qualify for my 4th Olympics, and I put in a lot of work, and I knew what I needed to do and all of those sort of things. And all that other noise is simply that. It's noise. Yeah, it can become very consuming. But you've got to find a way to actually work around it and don't get encapsulated by it because it becomes negative, and it puts a lot of extra pressure on you. And some people can deal with it, some people can't deal with it. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't extra motivation to get back, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's that drive within you to want to compete regardless of who the competition is, whether it was Collis or whether it was Ben Lima or Augustine Chogi or whoever it was. It's that determination to want to beat the people you're competing against is what drives me anyway. And I'm sure there was some extra tension around that for various reasons, no doubt. But ultimately, it was about me trying to qualify for my 4th Olympics, and to do that, I had to win the race and win it in the time, and we did that.
All right, Craig. So let's pepper some questions at him, and then get on to part 2. Short
just
answers here, Craig. Quick fire.
Yeah, so just the mental side of distance running. So at the elite level, obviously everybody's physically talented, and often it's the mental side that holds people back. I always felt that when you're at your best, you were very good at that part of the sport. Almost like there was this, and don't take it the wrong way, like this air of arrogance about you. Like I remember hearing, I don't know if you were saying it, you referred to it, the 2006 World Cup, when your coach called you up the day before and you said, "Oh, yeah, Bekele's running." And you put it nicely, but I think you sort of said, "Oh, I don't give a shit who's running." Almost like I am going to beat that person. There's not a lot of people that have that confidence. How do you develop that?
I think it comes from the work that goes into it and the environment you're in. I spoke about it briefly. A lot of it's natural, like it's just in you, and you've got to be unafraid to let it out. I think the key to all of this is not being afraid to get beaten or to lose, but certainly be afraid to not try. Like if you're not trying, that's, in my opinion, that's a cop out. That in many respects is worse than being beaten, because a lot of people default back to that because they know that if they haven't tried and they've got beaten, they've got an excuse. I used to always put myself in a position where I didn't have an excuse, and I was quite happy to get beaten. Like Melbourne, if someone was better, then good on you. I'm happy to shake your hand and say, well done. But what I couldn't deal with, like that 1500 in Sydney 2 weeks before the 2012 Olympic trials, was not give my best. That really annoyed me. And if I ever did that's when I got really upset. I was never upset beaten by someone better or on a day that I gave my best. When I ran 12:55, Gabriel Salesi beat me. I know these are short fire questions, sorry, but when he beat me, I gave my best, so I can be happy with that, right? But the days you don't give you the best are the days that haunt you the most.
You mentioned one of your regrets in the sport was not getting on the piss with Warney on the way home. Any other regrets in terms of like things that you would have liked to have changed with either races or mistakes you made in training? Anything that stands out?
Not really. I'm pretty happy with with the career I had. I think, no, to be quite honest, I gave it everything, did everything I could, and very happy with what I achieved.
Craig, my one's around, like, what do you think about some of these guys you used to race and training with who have shown, like, longevity in the sport? Like, we've seen Chepchirchir dominate the world marathons, seen Calli still rocks up at a couple of marathons. Augustine Chogi, he started Boston. I think he was a DNF in the end. Mo Farah, your old training partner, who then went on to dominate with the gold medals. Like, when you sit back and you were kind of out of the sport where they're still kicking around, what's their secret? What do you reckon?
I have no idea. They may not have anything else to do in life. I'm not sure. But I probably started a little bit earlier than they did. I sort of started in 99, 2000, where Mo didn't get on the scene until 04, 05, 06. He was still just getting into it, and then he was great. Kipchoge's probably the one. He's the most impressive one. Calli, yes, had some longevity, but Kipchoge ran in 01, 02, 03, medalled in those major championships, and he's still going. So for him, mate, you'd have to ask him what the secret is. I have no idea, but whatever it is, it's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty good. My other question is about how do you think you'd go if you were an athlete in this day and age with like the social media world and the Strava and the interaction? Like, you were always great at doing the interviews, but do you think there's a responsibility for athletes now to put X amount of content on Instagram? And we talked about the OAC guys over in America with their podcast and YouTube channel. And how do you think you'd fit into that scene now? Would you embrace it, or like just throw your phone in the river?
I would probably throw my phone in the river. I really would struggle with it now, although you're different now than you were 15, 20 years ago. But when I was running, Let's Run was probably the main sort of interaction between the running community, good, bad and ugly, in terms of the message boards and articles and all of that sort of stuff. Flow Track was just getting up and going, so there was a bit of a sort of medium there for interviews and all of that sort of stuff. And but I never got on to Let's Run, never watched the Flow Track stuff, never engaged with any of that, because it used to not upset me, but it used to get me going, whether it was good or not. The feedback, if it was really good feedback, I'd feel really, up and about. And if it wasn't, I'd get really angry or frustrated about it. So in the end, I was just, I'm not going to read it. I don't want to know, because, at the end of the day, it's external, stimulus that I didn't need. I always knew that if I wanted to compete, I would be competitive. And if I needed some downtime, I could have that. I didn't need to follow all this other stuff. But in terms of what this generation of athlete needs to do, I think there is an obligation for them to engage in the social interaction of social media and things like that. More so because of the professional nature of sport now, contracts they have. It's obviously ingrained in those contracts in terms of that engagement and interaction, posts and all of those other bits and pieces. Do I think it's good for them? No. I don't think it helps them run any better. I certainly don't think it helps their state of mind. I think there's a lot of challenges, and this is a broader conversation outside of track and field as well, in regards to all the content and social media and all of those various bits and pieces. We see it every day in the school stuff that we do. Yes, it has a purpose, but it needs to be managed and it needs to be controlled at the right time. And even now, with some of the athletes that I'm working with, we'll put the phone away on competition day and actually not get engaged in social media. So if they want to put content out, you do it the day before or the day after, but don't do it in the day of competition, because you get caught up in all the other bits and pieces. You need to focus on what you're doing rather than focus on what the expectations of others in terms of what you need to be doing.
Yeah. One more each, Croaks, then we're going to OAC.
Okay. All right, let's go. What are your thoughts on the current state of like athletics and, every couple of weeks, somebody being popped for drugs? Like, thoughts on that?
Track and field, road racing, which is...
These are not quick fire questions, Jude. Some consideration in regards to the responses. I think that there are athletes that are getting caught for doing the wrong thing, and that's inevitable, unfortunately, in all professional sport, not just in track and field. I don't like it. But if you want to, again, be the glass half full person and say, well, then the testing is doing its job, fantastic. But look, to be honest, I don't give it a lot of thought. I used to have to answer these questions all the time when I was running about athletes that may or may not have been getting assistance elsewhere. It was something that didn't factor into my mind because I had to run against them, whether they were doing it or whether they weren't doing it. It didn't really matter to me. I still had to race against them. So same approach now with coaching. We do what we do. We know what we're doing. We believe in back in the process that we're going through, and we'll go out and if we can deliver our best result, we can't control what these other athletes are going to do, whether they're doing the right or the wrong thing. We need to focus on what we're doing.
Do you think the drugs, though, were just as bad back when you were competing? Because I remember there was a period there of diamond leagues where, it used to be a period where if you were breaking 13 minutes, like there weren't that many people breaking 13. And then I remember 1 or 2 diamond leagues, there were like multiple people running sub 12:50. And so you're going, what's going on here? And you don't see that as much anymore. Like you see a few people running sub 12:50, but there was, multiple amounts in one race or a few races back then.
Oh, there's definitely performances, not just in middle distance, but in lots of the event categories where they stand out that you kind of look at and think that's a little bit odd in terms of how good that was. But as I said, you try not to think about it too much. I mean, I think the progression in the sport now is in the depth of good performances. It's not necessarily in the actual pinnacle performance. So, like Bakili's 12:37 has now been surpassed with a 12:35, but they're very rare. Hisham El Garouge and Bernard Lagat's 3:26. The guys are actually not running that fast anymore. So they're not running any faster now than they were when I was running. In fact, we were running faster back then, but there's just more people doing it more consistently across the board throughout the entire season anywhere. They're not set up races in Oslo or in Zurich or whatever. They're people are running. Like Ollie Hoare won the 1500 at the Commonwealth Games in 3:30. Those sort of performances are becoming more and more consistent. But to answer your question, I ran 12:55. I'm 6'3". I'm from Australia, born in Frankston. If I can do it without any assistance, drugs, whatever, just hard work, commitment and dedication, it would be wrong of me to start pointing the finger at other people that are running just as quick or maybe a few seconds faster and say, well, just because you've done that, you've cheated. I take the view that they're just good, and if they're doing the same work as me and doing the same, for the same commitment as I do it, and they're, as focused and determined and have all the assets that I have. And well, I'm not that big-headed to say they're not better than me. I'm quite happy to admit that there are athletes in the world that were better than me. And if they ran 12:48, then great. I'll give them credit until proven otherwise. But if I can do it, there's no reason why others can't do the same thing.
Enter the 2023 Gold Coast Marathon now and run your best race this July. 60% of runners achieve a PB at this event, and you can too. Head to goldcoastmarathon.com.au to enter now.
The